Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Oh, I know you can do better than that. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. And welcome to the Tuesday, November 25th, 2008 meeting of the Glendale City Council. Mr. Kasakian, our city clerk, could you please call the roll?
Council members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Draymond.
Here. And our flag salute tonight is led by Councilmember Weaver.
Please join with me in the flag salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our invocation, please remain standing for tonight's invocation, which will be presented by the Very Reverend David Palmer.
As we prepare for a day of Thanksgiving, I present this prayer on behalf of Bread for the World. Let us pray. Most gracious God, who gives the fruit of the earth for the benefit of all your creatures, we give thanks to you for the abundant harvest and plentiful food. We pray for those in our land who are denied these gifts and seek your forgiveness for our complicity in their want. We thank you for our government, designed to be responsive to the will of the governed and for the choices that are ours in this land of opportunity. We pray for those whose voices are not heard and for those who do not hear. Forgive us when our choices are selfish ones, and forgive us especially when we do not choose to raise our own voice against the pain of those among us who suffer needless want. Most of all, O God, we give you thanks for your steadfast love that continues to inspire us to work for the greatest good of all, that everyone might have abundant life. Amen.
Amen.
I want to thank Reverend Palmer for those words. Mr. Kasakian, could we hear your report, please?
The agenda for the November 25th, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, November 20th, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to our first item.
First item, under presentation and appointments at 3A, is the agenda preview for the meetings of December 2nd, 2008.
Okay, thank you. For our agenda preview, let's go to Assistant City Manager Bob McFall.
Thank you very much. December 2nd, hard to imagine next week, December 2nd, there will be 23 shopping days left before Christmas. And in honoring that, we'll have on the Glendale Redevelopment Agency two items. There will actually be two public hearings. The first will be a parking exception request for a fast food restaurant, Philly's Best, located at 107 East Broadway. Next, there will be a public hearing from the Director of Development Services for a parking exception report and a new facade design for a full-service restaurant, Panery Bread, to be located at 300 North Brand. There will be a joint meeting of the City Council and the Glendale Housing Authority. Three items: the Director of Community Development and Housing with a report regarding the proposed community garden project proposed to be located at 870 Monterey Road. Secondly, the Director of Community Development and Housing with a proposed affordable home ownership project, Dorn Gardens. And then lastly, the Director of Community Development and Housing regarding past actions and discussions regarding rent control mediation and rental housing items. On the City Council agenda that evening at 6 o'clock, there are several items. Director of Development Services with the consideration of resolution of an intention to levy and collect assessments in the Adams Square Business Improvements District. Secondly, development of the Director of Development Services with the Adams Square Merchants Association budgets, their annual budget submittal for calendar year 2009. Next, the Director of Administrative Services will be presenting the first quarter financial update and adjustments report for the 2008-9 budget, and the Director of Administrative Services regarding a special election measure related to the city's utility users tax. Then lastly, there will be a hearing, the Director of Planning on the Glendale Municipal Code amendments related to various use variances. That would be it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McFall. Let's move on to item 3B.
At 3B, Mr. Mayor and Council, is presentation of plaque by Mayor of the City of Monrovia, Rob Hammond, in recognition of Glendale's Police Department's assistance during a gang activity experience this year.
Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor Draymond. Jim Starbird used to be our city manager, quite a while ago. Looking well, Jim. The beginning part of 2008 was a little bit of a rough patch for the city of Monrovia, and we had a lot of gang activity. And when we put the word out for help, the city of Glendale was one of the first to respond to help us in our time of need. So I'm going to each of the cities, some 18 cities in our area that have helped out our city during our time of need. As a reminder to the city of Glendale that if you ever need us, we'll be there for you, but specifically to thank the mayor and the city council, Chief Adams, and in particular all of the residents of Glendale for helping out the residents of Monrovia. So it's with that intention that I'd like to present this plaque to the city of Glendale in appreciation for what you've done for us.
Well, thank you. I'd like to step down there and receive that.
Mr. Mayor, while you're going down, if I can take the liberty, I think you have a member of your police department with you?
I have Chief Johnson with us.
I might just note it was long enough ago that I was in Monrovia that Chief Johnson, I think, was a patrol officer who became a detective, who before I left, I think, became a sergeant, and we used to say, he has great potential. He could be a chief someday.
Meet you, and thank you so much.
Could we get our chief of police and some of the officers up here?
That'd be great.
They'll wait their turn, Mr. City Manager.
Mark,
Nice to meet you.
come up, face the mayor.
How are you? See you. How are you? See you.
Where do you want to?
How about right here?
Thank you all.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. Right, well, Mr. Kasakian, can you take us on to the next item?
Next items are regarding nomination assignments, and at 3C is a nomination assignment for the Transportation and Parking Commission for Councilmember Najarian to nominate. At D is another nomination assignment for the Commission on Status of Women, also to Councilmember Najarian. At E is a nomination assignment for the Commission on Status of Women to you, Mr. Draymond, Mayor Draymond. And at 3F is an appointment of Mr. Alma Stepanian to the Arts and Culture Commission. This was a nomination put forth by Councilmember Yusefian.
And at this time, I would like to put the nomination of Aram Stepanian for Arts and Culture. He happens to be the art director of the Luna Playhouse, which happens to be a playhouse in the city of Glendale.
Second.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second? I just want, where is that on the agenda, Mr. Yusefian? Number?
3F.
Yeah, so, but before we go there, I have a couple of cards.
Okay.
For an earlier item, I mean.
Oh, and earlier.
For 3C, which is the nomination of Transportation and Parking Commission, which is kind of unusual and irregular. Let me turn to our city attorney and just get a...
Just an assignment.
This is a ministerial assignment. The mayor, in your prerogative, you do not have to allow someone to speak on just a ministerial assignment. Certainly next week, or at some point in time in the future, when a nomination is offered up, the public can be permitted to speak. It's strictly on the agenda to inform the public if that's what's occurring.
And there is also a speaker card for item 3G, like George, and this is an appointment.
That's different.
So let me suggest, Mr. Milano, that in terms of speaking on 3C, that we ask... Can't see you. There we are. That we ask if you would like to speak on the actual nomination or appointment, rather, next week, rather than on simply placing a name in nomination, because there isn't even a vote on that.
Or he can fill part of his time during oral communications if he'd like as well.
When a name is nominated.
So in any case, but I will hear you on 3G, which is an actual appointment where there's a vote. But we're not there yet when we come to it. Okay? Let's take these in order, though, if you don't mind. Can we start with item 3C?
We've already done that.
There's a motion and a second on
So the
3.
first appointment is F then? Okay. And that is where we left off with Mr. Yusefian. Sorry.
The motion
Motion is a
Sorry,
second.
Councilman, we have a second. All right. And did you want to read any of the...
already.
Okay. And if there are no other comments, let's take the roll, please.
Council members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. All right. Item G, please.
3G is an appointment of Ms. Cindy Vasquez to the Audit Committee, put forth by Councilmember Quintero.
Okay, and let's entertain the motion. We also have a speaker on this. So.
Okay, I nominate Cynthia Vasquez for the Audit Committee post.
Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any comments from the council? There are none. Mr. Milano?
Good afternoon, Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Milano. I want to speak with regard to the selection of, or the nomination of members for commissions. I've attended the Audit Committee before, and I've noticed that I was told that some of the members are not what I would call frequent or regular members. There appears to be a problem with absenteeism with some of these committees. I'm not saying that this lady that has been nominated is not capable or would not be, but these committees and these commission members are our link. They are the junction between the public and policy, because after all, they will be advising you with regard to what they see, and it is my hope that there'll be perhaps a more significant transparency with the way that members are selected. I'm sure that you've selected someone of capability and background in governmental and fund accounting, but I'm concerned oftentimes about the fact that there seems to be a significant lack of comfort with their self-authority to be able to have individuals who will tell the staff, these are the things that we want to see on the agenda, and for them to set an agenda. And the reason why I'm speaking here is because it is the common denominator that I see with many people that have been selected to commissions who are not what I would call comfortable in their own shoes when it comes to addressing or asserting the authority that has been vested in them to be able to ask for or for accountability, or ask for reports, or ask that things be set on the agenda. I'm presenting it now because it's the most relevant place for me to put it. But I don't see, for example, ads that have been placed, let's say, in front of, on the marquee of the community college to say, this is a commission that has a vacancy available, or to see it in any other very major in public. So I would be interested to find out, how many applications were received for this position, to see if we're really doing the proper outreach. Because with a city of 200,000, I would imagine that you get 10, 15 people at least who would be interested in a position like this. And if we're not, perhaps the outreach that we have, that we generate to bring these people in, may not be quite sufficient. The idea of empowering the public to partake in these commissions and to make it truly lively and accountable, and to make the staff accountable, requires that we choose from the widest set of potential candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. All right.
Motion's been made.
We have a motion and a second on this item. Is there any other discussion? Okay, there is none. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Okay. Let's hear 3H.
3H is reappointment of Mr. Gary Cornell to the CDBG Advisory Committee, and this was a nomination put forth by Councilmember Quintero.
I move we reappoint Gary Cornell to the CDBG Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments?
How long are these terms? Let me ask. I know we staggered the initial term. After that, are they a
3 years.
a 3-year term?
Is the type 2.
But some were 2 and some were 3. It was kind of
Yeah.
a strange.
First time.
All right. Mr. Kasakian, please.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. A 3I, please.
3I is appointment of Mr. Richard Bennett to the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission. This was a nomination put forth by Mayor Draymond.
Thank you. I'd like to place Richard Bennett's name in nomination for the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Second.
Thank you. Let me just, since I did not last week, let me go over his qualifications, just his educational background. First of all, he has a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the University of Michigan, and also a Juris Doctor of Law from Whittier College of Law. He has a background in business, but also a background in recreational activities in the city of Glendale. But also he is a docent at the Gene Autry Western Museum, and also tutors for the School on Wheels at Path Achieve in Glendale. He has participated in recreational competitive activities most of his life. He played 3 sports in school, played on championship softball teams in the city, and played competitive city league basketball, and was Glendale Parks and Recreation singles tennis champion in 1992. Spends a good deal of his time advocating on parks issues in the city. That is, his personal comment is, if literature is food for the brain and recreation is food for the body, there's no more important human activity than physical exercise. A progressive city must provide outlets for its citizens of all ages and sexes, and competitive sports outlet for those interested in participating. With that, I will place his name in nomination. We have a second. I have no cards. Is there any further comments? Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next item.
Next is City Council and staff comments.
Mr. Weaver.
A couple weeks ago, I went to the Parliament's dinner, and I sat with my wife and I sat with this lady, and we got talking, and she apparently grew up with you, or her husband grew up with you. I didn't have enough time to extricate from her what you were like when you were young.
Worse.
But I promised that I would mention to you, and so she gave me her name tag from the event. Ring a bell?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. She could tell a lot of tales, huh?
Absolutely.
Yep. Dinner was
Yes,
too
indeed.
short. The dinner was too short, so. And now I promised her I would do that here.
Well, thank you.
Secondly, I'm getting calls on the Rose Float decorating, and I tell everybody, already entered a lot into the database. All you have to do is log on to the GlendaleRosefloat.com, and the sign-up forms are there for adults and children. First day of decorations, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. That's a good way to start. So anybody wants to work, and here's this, pull the forms down, fill them in, and send them in. And come see, it's the Alex Theater this year. Big white limo convertible in front of it. So we're going to bring in another winner. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Quintero?
I wanted to talk about Glendale's Chess Park. I had the good fortune to run into Armin Arbatsumian, who is one of the coaches, and then I actually saw the event that took place at the Chess Park on Brand, where more than 50 players competed in the annual Goodwill chess event. And there were lots of folks in attendance, and this gentleman is a coach who accompanied the U.S. team to Vietnam, where they had a worldwide tournament. He mentions that the American team won 3 medals. So we have a very strong chess community here in Glendale, and I'm very happy that they had the event at the chess park. Everything turned out really well, and hopefully we'll continue to host events of that significance in the future.
Very good. Councilmember Najarian, anything? Mr. Yusefian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the opportunity to go to a grand opening of Shoal Canyon Estates this weekend that opened right across from the Adventist Medical Center. It's a retirement community, and lo and behold, almost 50% of the place is rented out. Very nice project, extremely nice looking. And you have to be 55 and up, which means Mr. Weaver's definitely qualified, and Mr. Quintero's qualified. But
Moving in wherever he moves.
right, okay.
I'll never tell you where
I'm moving next door, no matter where Mr. Weaver moves.
Even over at the arrangements at Forest Lawn? Or?
Actually, above him would be a little better.
Okay.
Sudden death, if that happens.
So if you are thinking about retiring and be close to the hospital, that is a location you may want to think about. The other activity that I had an opportunity to go to, I haven't done this for a long time. I had an opportunity to go and meet the new president of Karabakh, who was elected in September of this year. Mind you, we are very proud when we saw our newly elected president got 65% of the vote. Just want to let you know this individual got 85% of the vote when he got elected, and that's a pretty large number. So his name is Baku Sahakian. So I was at an event last night, and I think Mr. Najarian was also there with me, and we welcomed him to the city of Burbank. Unfortunately, he was in the city of Burbank, but nevertheless we let them know that we are very happy to see him in the United States, and we wish him all the luck for the next 4 years, that he has a lot of tasks ahead of him. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I have a few things. Some of them are just questions about the status of a few things, and a few are announcements. First is the ongoing issue related to the cellular antenna and the T-Mobile meeting that we have talked about between representatives of the utility and the city and the neighborhood. When are we looking at that happening?
I don't know the specific date. Do you know?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we've contacted T-Mobile Corporate here in California, so we are arranging a meeting with their representative from the San Francisco area. Hopefully that's happening next week. We have also indicated to them that we thought it would be a good idea if T-Mobile initially met with the city manager and then potentially the council to lay out what their plan for the entire city of Glendale is, as far as they know it, for the next several years, so that we could have an idea of what their future planning is.
Right, because we'll need to know, Mr. Zern, the total number of sets of chains we'll need to chain ourselves to those locations.
Well, that's what we were looking for, is if we could get a projection of what they plan to do, that gives us an idea of where they're going, and we can then begin to prepare either to say we have alternative areas or then to get the word out to the public sooner. Once we talk to them about the specific issue of the existing pending applications, and then we can get back to the various neighborhoods in which those sites are going. But then the broader issue of what's the future hold for T-Mobile, and bring that back to you as a body so that you're aware of what's going on and you can express to them directly.
Well, yes, and since T-Mobile is not the only utility out there, that's why we need a little broader policy discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, that's why we're planning on doing just that, so that when we get alerted to these interest in placing antennas, we can advise them as the steps that we anticipate them taking, including neighborhood meetings. In the meantime, the pole in question and the work on placement of that cellular tower has been placed on hold until those meetings can be held.
And that was going to be the last thing I was going to ask about it, just for clarification for the public.
And held in abeyance.
That is, and as part of the mix, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, a member of my staff is researching essentially what I'll describe as the outer limits of our ability to regulate the placement of these wireless facilities within the city, how far we can go, how far federal law goes, how far state law goes, putting all that together as part of the package.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Howard, and thank you, Mr. Zernan, Mr. City Manager. The next thing I wanted to ask about was, and I know this is partly rests with the city clerk and partly probably is also policy, with regard to student film permits and the fee structure related to that. And I'd like to know if we can take that up at some point to talk about that, to try to incentivize that a little more. Part of it would be, I don't know how many student film permits are issued in the city in the course of a year, whether we would take a huge hit to reduce that in a way that would allow for more student projects and for them to happen more easily. So I don't know if we can look that up.
We'll prep a report with data and place the matter on the agenda.
Thank you.
In addition to the discount that we offer currently,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. I mean, in other words, if we could hear what the policy currently is, and in addition to that, the data as to how many we usually issue in a year, to see whether if we created a deeper discount to student filmmakers, whether or not we would, I don't know whether it's one permit or 20 or 200 in a year. So
And we'll include a survey of other cities as well.
thank you. That would be very helpful. Thank you very much. The next thing I wanted to ask or to mention was that actually City Clerk Kasaki and I were both at the Glendale, actually the annual Glendale Community Thanksgiving celebration at what it was formerly known as the Church of the Lighted Window in La Cañada, and that is sponsored by the Glendale Religious Leaders Association. It's basically an interfaith service in observance of Thanksgiving holiday. It was a terrific activity. I would encourage you to attend next year, since it's an annual event, and I would encourage my colleagues, if their schedule permits, next year to attend. It is a terrific event, very uplifting, very unifying, and very enlightening as well. It's a good way to help start out the holiday season. As I say, the city clerk was also there, and seemed like a very, very nice presentation. I'd like to also announce Glendale's 2008 Homeless Connect Day, and the public is invited. And Connect Day provides a one-day volunteer opportunity to help government and nonprofit agencies provide a range of services for homeless people, all at one location. And this is Thursday, December 4th, 2008, from 8:30 a.m. till 3 o'clock p.m. at the Glendale Armory at 220 Colorado Street in Glendale. And the slogan is, "Let's help our homeless neighbors access services they need." So again, that is Thursday, December 4th, from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Glendale Armory at 220 Colorado Street in Glendale. That's Homeless Connect Day. So I'd like to invite you to come out to that. Mr. City Clerk, I received an email, Mr. City Clerk, Mr. City Manager, I received an email from Alan Kleinsasser, and maybe Mr. Zern, you can help here too. He writes, he's a resident on East Alado Lane in Whiting Woods, and his concern is that there was a strip or a meridian there that had water spigots that the locals have been using for years and years to irrigate landscaping that I guess some of the residents have planted along there. I don't know whether they are gardens or just landscaping, and in the recent little while that has all been disconnected, and so this area is now, the vegetation is dying, but they also want to know basically what's up. So would I. So can we check into it? And
Can you forward the email?
yes, I was going to actually.
It's a new one on both of us. So.
Yeah. So And
Some spigots are in Steve's domain, so
I see.
other spigots aren't.
Some might be in,
We'll find out who owns those
some might
spigots.
be in Mr. Steiger's jurisdiction.
That's right.
All right, and then I met with a friend of yours, actually, Mr. Yusefian, one Pam Ellis, who, though no longer on the school board, is still a city advocate, and she brought some guests with her, and one of them was Joan Zierhut from over in the Toll Hoover Keppel area, and they're working on a public art project that would sort of tie together the three schools there along with some of the primaries, and it involves a portion of public right-of-way with regard to a mosaic project. And so I'm wondering if we can set up a meeting with them to get more of the details of their project so they can bring you up to speed on what it is they're trying to accomplish. But it sounds like a really simple but artistic and fun way for the city and the schools to work together on a public art project. So I'm going to pass this down to Mr. Zern, the contact information. Thank you. Then also, Mr. Zern, see what happens when your counsel goes out in public? We're stopped by lots of folks that ask questions. Isn't that true, gentlemen? We were constantly approached with things. So anyway, I was also approached by the people over on Arden, Mr. Zern, related to the trees on the sidewalk where the city redid the sidewalk and in the process removed some cinder block planter boxes that had been put in, I think, by the owner of the veterinary business there. And they came and put some sandbags there, and that was the last they ever heard. So
we are on it. That is, we have that under, I believe, an existing contract that just went to work. It will go to work on Monday.
Okay.
So we put the sandbags around the trees just for
to help hold them in place
and protect the root ball.
Right.
And so the contract we have out right now will include putting the block planter walls back up.
Okay. Would it be possible to contact them to just let them know that something is coming? Because
absolutely, not
I
a
don't
problem.
think they understood what the sandbags were, because they approached me and said, we don't know what this means. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll let them know.
Thank you. Lastly, I'm going to be asking after the first of the year we come back for the public's help, a little project that I was talking about briefly the other night when we did the kickoff for the Snapshot of Glendale book at the library. Unfortunately, the newspaper didn't cover it, but nonetheless, there were photographers. I guess there were something like between 60 and 80 people there to attend the kickoff of the basically 24 Hours in the Life of Glendale book project. In working with the Glendale libraries and our director of libraries, I want to request the assistance of volunteers from the historical community, both the Glendale Historical Society and the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley, as well as many of you who aren't necessarily involved in those organizations, for a Glendale History Drive to be scheduled and take place in the upcoming year. Glendale History Drive would be requesting that all of you that have historical artifacts in your attics and basements and maybe hanging on your walls in your house or in photo albums and so forth, whether they are documents or artifacts or photographs that relate to Glendale history, that might bring those forward in an organized fashion, working with our volunteers and with our Glendale libraries to sort through those if you wanted to donate them. If not, if we could make, for example, high-resolution scans of your photographs or copies of your documents to help boost our city's collection of its own Glendale history. And so we'll be talking about that again later, but I just wanted to announce that I would like to help the two historical societies promote that along with the library. It's something that they have been anticipating for some time to do, and no time like the near future, I guess. So, and I'm going to be asking my colleagues to help with that as well, to help promote it at a later date that we will work up with the director of libraries. And that brings me to the end of my comments. Are there any staff or council comments? Mr. Yusefian.
I have one question from Mr. Agani. A few months ago, I brought up the issue of rezoning Hollister, which is on the other side of Glen Oaks Canyon, on the east side. I want to know when we're going to hear something about that from you.
If I recall, you asked what it would take, and I said it could either be initiated by the city council, by an action from you to have as the city council body to initiate it, or it could be initiated by the residents who are interested. I apologize. I was not under the impression that I was asked to bring it as started from the planning department, because we.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Then at this time, I would like to agendize that item.
Okay.
So we'll come back, so this way we can make a decision whether or not we want to go forward or not.
Right. Mr. Najarian.
What does this involve? Setbacks.
At this point, it'll involve a report to you outlining what it takes to rezone property and perhaps some geographic areas. After Mr. Agani talks with Councilmember Yusefian, that report will come back.
Right, I would expect to bring a report that just gives you general information and seeks direction to see if you want us to take a next step and implement some rezone process.
Very good. Are there any other...
Mr. City Clerk has something to...
Yes, I was just going to say, are there any other staff comments? Mr. Kasakian.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank Councilmember Quintero for making it out to a chess tournament. There was a couple of chess tournaments that took place in Chess Park recently, and most recently, actually in Dresden, Germany, took place and concluded the Chess Olympics, the Chess Olympiad, which is a foremost event for chess. The United States women's team is bringing home the silver medal, in no small part thanks to Datev Abrahamian, a Glendale resident and graduate of our local public schools, former student of my mother's. And in the men's division, the gold medal was actually won by Armenia's team, which actually beat China for the gold. So a small nation of about 3 million beat the Chinese chess juggernaut, which was a point of pride for many Armenian chess enthusiasts in the area. Also, I want to ask the council if we could consider adjourning tonight's meeting in memory of Vahi Gurjan, who succumbed to cancer recently. He was a former editor of the Asbar's Armenian daily language newspaper, the only Armenian language daily, bilingual daily, actually, in the United States. Longtime field worker for the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. He passed away last Sunday, leaving behind a lifetime of dedication to the Armenian and American communities, and service to the communities in the Middle East and all over the world. But most recently, he was a deputy in Senator Jack Scott's office for many years, serving as a liaison to the Armenian community. He was a familiar face at many events. He was born on October 7th, 1940 in Kermanshah, Iran, immigrated to the United States, and was involved in public service since his emigration. He was buried at Forest Lawn in Hollywood Hills and survived by his wife Louisa and his sons Narig and Varant.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me just add a few words that I'm very happy we're going to adjourn in his honor. He was a wonderful guy, someone I knew for many years, and very hard worker and always in good spirits. Even through his illness, he just kept going to work, and he's just an excellent guy, and he'll certainly be missed.
And we will certainly do that, Mr. Kasakian.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next item.
Next item is consent items, including the minutes following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of the council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Mr. Weaver.
Move the consent calendar at 5.
Second. I have no cards and no requests from the council to pull any items. So if there's no other discussion, let's call the roll.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver? Aye. Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communications on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we have oral communications on the agenda at the end of the agendized items, with the exception of those who are willing to volunteer to limit their time to 3 minutes for the purpose of making public announcements. And at this time, I have one card for that purpose, and that would be Aris Gregorian.
Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Good.
Thank you for having me here. Okay. Okay, my name is Eris Gregorian, and I work for Team Against Drugs Incorporated. And we together, along with 10 other staff members, we run the Say No to Drugs race. And it's our 8th annual, and it's being held in Griffith Park on December 14th. And I'd love to invite all of you and your families and all your staff and everyone. If they can make it, that'd be great. Put on your running shoes and come out. If not, we'd love for you to just come out, and maybe we can get you on stage and give us an announcement for one of the top members or the top runners. We have, along with numerous law enforcement agencies, we have the DEA. They have the Science Museum going on, and we've joined forces with them with passing out our flyers for our event and supporting them for drug education and awareness. All of our proceeds go to the Boys and Girls Club of America, help them out. Got drug-free marshals who go out to educate kids in schools. We also have the Friends of Narconon who help also in that aspect, going out and educating kids and stuff. So along with Sheriff Lee Baca and many other law enforcement agencies, LAPD, we got Burbank PD. I believe the chief of police over there, he's going to come out and join us also. So I just was coming by to basically invite you guys, give you some of our flyers, and hope to see you out there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we'll get those from you, those flyers.
How far is the race? 5K or 10K?
Yeah, it's basically a 5K walk, 5 10K run, and then also for the kids, which I forgot to announce, which is really important, we have a kiddie fun run that's along the grass area over there in the Griffith Park. And afterwards, there's a nice kids zone that we set up for them. Many of activities and other people who are involved with kids, getting kids off of drugs and all that good stuff. Fingerprinting, everything. We've got a lot of stuff going on, so it should be a really good time. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Mohill.
Evening, Mayor, Councilman. I'd like to make an announcement, although it's not my place, but the people who represent this organization are not here. So I'm going to make the announcement. I was reading the other day's paper about the Glendale Youth Symphony. Next Tuesday night at 7:30 at the Alex Theater, they're going to be performing. The price is between $5.50 for students and $9.50 for adults. For those who have never experienced classical music, it's a wonderful experience. And the children that perform at this Glendale Youth Symphony are amazing. They're protégés, is that how you pronounce the word? And for those who've never, say, I'm not going down to Disney Hall, right here in Glendale, they perform like 2-3 times a year. They perform symphonies, concertos, and it's a wonderful experience to bring children who've never seen a violin or a viola or a tuba. And I'm just here to make the announcement for this group. Again, it's the Glendale Symphony. It was advertised in the Glendale News Press the other day.
When again?
Next Tuesday, December the 2nd, at 7:30 p.m. at the Alex Theater. And here's a bonus. Supervisor Michael Antonovich will provide opening remarks, before the concert. A silent auction during the intermission will benefit the scholarship fund. So again, those who have never attended this event, it's a little kept secret in Glendale. In fact, I go up in the balcony, because that's where it sounds the best, and that's the cheap seats. Thank you all.
Mr. Mohill, could you give the name and the date again?
Sure.
There was a little confusion about the name of the organization.
Okay, the
it's not the Glendale Symphony.
It's very unique name. It's called the Glendale Youth Symphony.
There you go.
Hey, And 7:30, December the 2nd, at the Alex Theater. That's at 116 North Brand Boulevard. They even give you a 15% discount here if you have a group of 15 people. So, bring your friends and family and neighbors. I'll just pass this along for
Thank you so much. All right, that was my last card for this portion of oral communications. Let's move on to the next item.
Next item is adoption of ordinances. At 7A is an ordinance adding section 2.83.102 through 2.83.105 and 2.83.121, and amending section 2.83.110 of the Glendale Municipal Code relating to ethics, limiting elected officials from soliciting funds under defined circumstances and requiring reporting of contributions made at the behest of an elected official, offered at 11/18/08 by Councilmember Yusefian.
Okay.
At this time, I would like to move the item.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I have one speaker card. Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Mayor Draven, members of the City Council and City staff. Well, this year we've had two memorable ordinances, both of them dealing with ethics. I think this City Council has moved in the right direction this year, more so than any councils in the previous years that I've been attending. I believe that this particular ordinance was long in coming, and I certainly commend Councilman Yusefian for moving forward with in sponsoring this type of ordinance, and for the rest of the councilmen to support it, especially the city attorney. I'm sure he's worked very hard and long in trying to make something that would work for all of you. But I do have one question, and that's with regard to the penalties. I know that as a city we can only give misdemeanors, but I was wondering if someone is found to have this particular type of ethical conflict, whether the misdemeanor is going to be applied for every instance, or whether it's be done irrespective of the quantity. So if somebody is should we say, soliciting funds for $5,000, whether the penalty is the same if they solicit funds for $50,000. And I would appreciate an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Let's see if we have an answer. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I think I'll answer it in two ways. One, unlike certain crimes where there is a threshold which defines or divides misdemeanors and penalties based upon some monetary figure, like grand theft versus petty theft, for example, we don't have that kind of differentiation here in this ordinance. A misdemeanor is a misdemeanor is a misdemeanor. That's one part of the answer. The other part is that each case is going to be evaluated on its own merits to determine if prosecution is warranted. In some cases, the facts, while some may think prosecution may be warranted, after an analysis and the fact that the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, we may not feel it appropriate to file misdemeanor charges. But nonetheless, if misdemeanor charges are warranted, they will be filed.
Okay.
That's as far as we can go even as a charter city.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Mr. Yusefian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank Mr. Milano. I think this was, to an extent, congratulations, and I think he gave us a couple of points. Nevertheless, I'd like to make this very clear. While once in a while some of us have ideas, it's not just one council member who can make things happen. It's a collaborative effort. So some of us come up with ideas, but it takes at least 2 votes, sometimes 3 or 4, to kind of go along. So I appreciate the fact you mentioned maybe I may have come up with the idea, but it took the support of my colleagues to move this type of legislation forward. So I want to thank my colleagues also.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Najarian.
Thank you. I think it's important to note that I believe that the impending adoption of this ordinance is not intended to trap or to catch or to penalize any member of the City Council. I think it's prospective in its scope. Therefore, I'd like to request that as a component of our ethics training every 2 years under AB 1234, Mr. Howard, that you include a component or a unit dealing with the specific nuances of Glendale's Glendale's ethics ordinances that that may be adopted now and perhaps also in the future. So we include the education component rather than say, aha, we got you, Mr. Jones. You put your name on that document, you solicited funds, whatever the particular situation would be. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, an excellent idea. We already include a component, if you take my class and Mr. Garcia's class, we include the Chapter 2.83. We'll certainly include this portion, this edition of 2.83. It's an excellent point and one definitely worthy of inclusion.
Okay. And just as a reminder, we still have an actual ethics ordinance on the agenda coming forward in January.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. If there's no other comments, let's call the roll.
Council members Najarian,
yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. All right. Let's hear 7B.
7B is ordinance extending discretionary planning entitlements approved pursuant to Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code. This was offered on November 18, 2008 by Councilmember Yusefian.
Okay.
Move the items, Mayor. Second.
Motion is second. I have no speaker cards. Are there any comments? Hearing none. Mr. Kasakian, if you'd call the roll, please.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Move on to the next item.
7C is ordinance amending Section 105.3.2 of the 2007 California Building Code, adopted as Volume 1 of the Glendale Building and Safety Code 2008, as amended, relating to the expiration of building plan reviews. This was offered on November 18, 2008 by Councilmember Yusefian.
Move the item. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any speakers? Any comments? None. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian,
No.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. May we hear 7D, please?
7D is ordinance allowing the payment of the affordable housing in lieu fee to be paid at the time of the issuance of certificate of occupancy for any projects that receives a building permit on or before December 31st, 2009. This was also offered on November 18, 2008 by Councilmember Yusefian.
Move the item. Second.
Motion and a second. I have no speaker cards. Any comments? We have no debate. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. May we hear the next item, please?
Next item at 8A is City Manager regarding consideration and discussion of a resolution supporting Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. At 8A1 is resolution in support of CEDAW.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. Mr. City Manager. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and the public. I'm here to answer any questions you might have. I can give you a brief reporting on the convention, which is called CEDAW for short, or I can answer any questions you might have.
The only question I have is, would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Lana Haddad. I'm an analyst in the city manager's office.
Very good. Thank you.
I would like to move the resolution, Mr. Mayor. Second.
We have a motion and a jump ball for a second.
All right.
That's the city manager.
Do you have any cards?
I have no speaker cards. Mr. Najarian.
I would just like to say that oftentimes council is criticized for dealing with issues that go beyond the scope of the matters involved in the city of Glendale. I won't raise some of the previous issues. We invariably took heed for them. But this is one issue where I do feel comfortable in extending beyond the reach of Glendale, reaching out to the United Nations body to express our support for this resolution. So I'm confident we can do this.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Do I have any other comment? Okay, hearing none, and I have no speaker cards. Mr. Kasakian, let's call the roll.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If I might add,
Please.
as acting Chair of the Commission on the Status of Women, I want to thank all of you for your support on this resolution. It means a lot to the women, not only in Glendale, but in the state and in the United States and all over the world, that you are supporting this. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and also
Paula
state your name
Devine.
for the record.
Paula Devine, Commission on the Status of Women.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kasakian, could we hear the item at 8B?
At 8B is Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. This was continued from November 18, 2008 meeting regarding proposed Pacific Pool development work at Pacific Park. 8B1 is a motion selecting and approving a Pacific Park pool preliminary concept as project master plan, directing staff to return with a contract amendment to extend RJM Design Group's scope of work to include design development, construction documents, bidding, and construction administration phases of work.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kasakian. Mr. Chapshin, before we go to this item, let me put the city vehicle in neutral for a minute and just inquire of the public, how many people are here on the Hillway Drive issue? 2. Okay, and how many people are here to speak on item 8C, 1 through 4, relating to city clerk calling for and giving notice of the general election? None. All right. With the indulgence of my colleagues in the council, I'd like to take the pool issue at the end of those items, because it doesn't appear that we will be long on these others. Okay, if you don't mind. I apologize for shifting gears. Putting the car back in drive. Mr. Kasakian, let's go to item 8C, which is actually, I believe, your item.
Mr. Mayor and Council, at 8C before you from our office, the City Clerk's office is calling for, actually a number of resolutions calling for and giving notice of the general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, April 7th, 2009. Mark your calendars. And at 8C1 is a resolution consenting to consolidate the general municipal election with the Glendale Unified School District and Glendale Community College District. At 8C2 is a resolution calling for a general municipal election and establishing a stipend for services. And at 8C3 is a resolution requesting services of registrar of voters. And at 8C4 is a resolution adopting a policy regarding candidates' cost for the April 7, 2009 general municipal election.
Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. And with that,
Move the resolutions at 1, 2, 3, and 4. Second.
okay. Mr. Kasakian, did you have anything to add to this before we vote? Yes. Okay. All right. I have no speaker cards on the topic. Mr. Najarian.
Just briefly, again, I just want to make it clear that by consolidating these elections, the other elective boards have agreed to submit to our campaign contribution limit ordinances.
Yes.
Yes, and
Let's make sure that they receive a reminder or a notice so they don't say, we didn't know by doing this, we had to comply with your $1,000 limit.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I can note for a moment that independently of the consolidation, both the Community College District and the Board of Education adopted resolutions essentially incorporating by reference our campaign finance ordinance and our absentee ballot ordinance. So they did it independently of the consolidation. And in their resolutions of consolidation, they did attach both entities attached copies of those resolutions. So it's fairly clear. We can certainly provide additional information and notice to them if they desire, but they did adopt it independently.
Thank you. Does that? All right. Mr. Yusefian.
Mayor, while we're at the issue of elections and so on and so forth, let me ask you this. At what point do we bring forward the item that we need to put in front of the voters for the UUT tax?
Comes on your next meeting.
Next week. Thank you.
Next week.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. I have no speaker cards for item 8C. We have a motion and a second. Can we take these as one, or we can? We have been moved as one. All right. Very good. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver. Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Let's move on to 8D.
At 8D is City Attorney regarding denial and findings regarding 3761 Hillway Drive, appeal of tentative parcel map number GLN 1622. At D1 is a motion denying tentative parcel map and making findings.
I'll move 8D1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from my colleagues?
Are there cards?
There are 2 cards.
I'll defer to them.
All right. Is there any other council member that wishes to speak
They only
before
want
we...
to speak if...
All right, then let's go to the public. We have 2 speaker cards. Claudia Cullen, followed by Brock Hill.
Claudia Culling, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members, and I just want to thank you very much on behalf of the Whiting Woods Property Owners Association for being considerate of the character and the terrain in our neighborhood. And we believe that denial of the parcel map is appropriate because it would not be consistent with the neighborhood, wouldn't conform to the neighborhood, and you can easily make those findings as the motion before you make. So we want to thank you.
Thank you very much. Brock Hill.
Brock Hill, Whiting Woods, Property Owners Association, Mayor Draymond, council members. I want to echo Claudia's thank you with regard to the council's efforts 2 weeks ago. In that period of time since then, I received innumerable emails thanking the board for its efforts with regard to the track map. And just out walking in the neighborhood, people approached me to say thank you. They've stopped me in my car. Today while I was shopping, 2 people in the neighborhood approached me to thank me on behalf of the board, and I want to express the neighborhood's appreciation for your efforts with regard to the track map. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hill. All right, we have a motion and a second. I have no other speaker cards. Councilmember Najarian, followed by Councilmember Weaver.
I've mentioned this last week, and I've had just brief discussions with the city attorney and Mr. Agani, and I just feel that this process is flawed in determining the suitability of a lot split. We are, going back to 2 weeks ago, we became so focused on the arguments about the particular home that was drawn and placed up on the board there. It was a bad-looking house. The house did not fit in the neighborhood. But query, would the applicant have submitted a very small, modest, low-level house? And had we all liked that home, and had the neighbors liked that home, saying this home is entirely consistent with what we have in Whiting Wood, and we approve the lot split, the applicant is completely free then to go back and change the design of that home and take it before design review and take his chances with design review. That would not have been fair to the residents because they were misled, and there certainly was no obligation on the part of the applicant to build that type of home, to design that type of home. It was perhaps a placeholder that he had put on there. Had the applicant been savvy and cunning in this case, and let's not say this applicant, but should an applicant be cunning and savvy in his next attempt to do a lot split in some other neighborhood located somewhere throughout the city, I believe that he would give instructions to his designer and to his facilitator to draw a picture of the smallest, least obtrusive home that you can. Nestle it right in the hillside. I don't care if it only turns out to be 1,200 square feet. We'll get the lot split. I'll sell it to the council. I'll sell it to my neighbors. And then I'll just throw it away and try it at design review board. So that, I think, is the flaw in the system. This home, unfortunately for the applicant, whether that was his intended home or whether it was just a placeholder for him, it's that home, that size, that massive, that bulk, all these design review issues that I think turned off a lot of the council. In fact, many of these findings, rather than discussing the narrow municipal code about the lot size, the configuration, the density, many of these findings talk about the project impacting the character, the location of the home being visible or not visible, the setbacks, etc. I think we're really moving into the design review stage. So if we're going to be looking at homes as part of the lot split, I think we need to look at homes and nail down the applicant on the style of home that he has. This could have just gone the other way if we had a very small home, tucked in, low-rise, everyone's happy this home would fit into the neighborhood, and then wham, design review time, here's this monster home that they try and sell. And the neighborhood says, well, that's not what we thought that he was going to build, and council will say, that's not what we thought he was going to build. If we knew that, we wouldn't have let him do the lot split. So we've got to tie, I think, the design and get a commitment from the applicant, a little more than just a placeholder on his lot and on his maps, as to what type of home he's going to do. Otherwise, we're really giving a lot of it's unfair to both sides. It's unfair to the homeowners who are objecting to a home that they see as massive, when in reality he could have designed something much more less obtrusive, and just vice versa. If he comes in and sandbags everyone with a cutesy little cottage, that no one has an objection to, we all vote for it, neighbors are behind it, and then wham, design review, here's this Mediterranean monster that he is trying to push on design review. So those are my comments on this whole process. It seems that we're missing something, and there's this disconnect between the approval of the parcel split and the design of the home, which may or may not go in.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. As one councilman, I may agree or disagree with some of the comments you've made. However, the item really isn't about the process. That we're voting on isn't about the process, so I will ask if you might like to put that in the form of a request to address that issue. We've heard two that bear on the process you're talking about within the last month that have to do with design and whether or not design should be considered or not be considered. So I'm wondering if you'd like to put that in the form of a request, because it really isn't a debate about this particular issue. It's about the process and a request for a change in how we look at these kinds of...
Okay, let me then ask, I would like to do that, but then make another comment. I would like to have this come back to see perhaps if other cities do it differently in terms of getting a commitment from the proposed lot splitter, as to what type of home he is going to have there, whether he's completely free to throw that cutesy little cottage out the window and come in with a big monster,
or the other way around.
Or the other way around. Exactly. So,
to the extent you can condition the track maps initially.
I think if there's at least some review, or at least a report that we could, perhaps other councilmen would agree with me once they see the full report. But my only other question is on these findings is, how can we talk about the location of a home having a visual impact, where the standard is that the lot is improper in design or configuration, etc. Is that a proper finding?
I don't want to now get into a debate on a process we may take up, unless this is a specific debate on this particular
question
relates
to the finding.
This is specifically to the second to last.
The reason I'm raising it is because I believe the previous discussion had nothing to do with this item, but the two attorneys didn't raise that at all as an issue, and so I was watching you carefully to see if you were going to raise that. So I will raise that issue since you did not. On this one, okay, let's go forward, but let's try to make sure it's about the debate on this vote. If it's about process, I will join you in asking for putting that on the agenda for discussion. Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mike Garcia, City Attorney's Office. Councilman Najarian, we did in reviewing the meeting from 2 weeks ago, we did try to focus the findings on the relationship of the configuration of the lot and what kind of home that would compel. I think there was discussion by council members, including the mayor, that it was their belief that the configuration of these lots were going to compel the location of a house in a certain area, and that so we weren't looking specifically at the location itself, but how the configuration of the lot was going to create some demands to put the house in a certain location, and the fact that the topography of the site was going to have a visual impact on the neighborhood. Because regardless of how the house is designed, the first floor of that house is likely going to have a visual impact on Whiting Woods, and that's the evidence in the record supports that finding in our view.
I'm not going to beat the dead horse. We've spent a lot of time on this one.
All right, but I agree that we do need to look at this in terms of separating those two issues. It's a difficult one to separate, and I think, although that was not certainly by any means the only deciding factor for me, but it certainly was one of the deciding factors for me in making my vote, when the topography of a lot compels the placement of a proposed house to be sited in a particular way on the lot, regardless of its configuration. I was just wondering, is Savvy and Cunning the name of the
design team?
The design team on this
Right.
project. Okay. All right. Mr. Weaver wanted to speak, and also Mr. Yusefian wanted to speak.
2 weeks ago, when I talked about this, I had studied the topography of the site, and I was convinced a different lot split may, and I emphasize may, have made possible two houses on the lot. With the denial, the applicant has full rights to resubmit a different lot split on there. I was trying to argue the point that until you know what kind of houses you can put on the lots, you don't know where you're going to split them. You've seen instances in Glendale looking at lots where they go all over the place simply to get the square footage necessary for the house to go on the lot. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's not square, it's not rectangle. It goes up and around and over and out and down in one lot. So again, back to the process, I'd like to see why can't you go to design review board first? Let the public get involved. If you can put two houses on a parcel like this, prove it to the public that they can do it and it's acceptable to the public. Then if it is, then meander the lot line between them to split it, to make it legal. But get to design review first. I tried to argue last week. It's been said that last picture put up there was done on arrival. So reverse it. That's where I think we ought to go. So everybody understand, the applicant can resubmit a new lot split, but I think it's the wrong way to go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Yusefian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make it very clear that my decision had nothing to do with that little flash of one little house out there. I frankly don't care whether there was a house there or not. I think when you do a subdivision of a lot, you know there's not going to be horses kept on that lot. Somebody's going to build a house. I don't care what it is. It's going to happen at one point. In my mind, no matter what size the house is, it's going to force the house to be in certain location, in certain configuration, based on the fact that you have cut that lot in half. Now you have half as much room as you used to have before. And so you're going to have twice as many houses that you used to have there before. And is it compatible with the surrounding lots in the neighborhood? And it fits within the configuration of that neighborhood. That's what most of these findings are. I do not think the ordinance is faulty at any point. It does give the council in the past and current and future enough flexibility to make the findings that is required to fit that neighborhood. So I don't see anything wrong with these findings. I think they're very correct. And my tribal memory serves me right. When Oakmont 4 was designed, they were on split lots. and they were supposed to build on one section and leave the other one open for open space. As you drive up to Oakmont 4, look at those huge houses. The subdivision said you were supposed not to build those houses. But he sold all those lots, and now we have those monster houses that sit there. So, I think you can put all kinds of twists and turns in some of these ordinances. Nevertheless, a very smart subdivider with a smart attorney can figure a way around it. Nevertheless, I have spent enough time in this city, involved with different ordinances in this city, to consider all the little factoids that what can happen, and I can't just close my eyes and say, well, it's not going to happen. I know it's going to happen. So for me to just say, I'm not going to look at what's going to happen in the future and approve a subdivision and put lines here, put lines there to justify it, really doesn't work for me. That's one of the reasons I came back to make the decision, and I think it's the right decision.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yusefian, Mr. Najarian, and then Mr. Quintero.
Mr. Quintero hasn't had a chance yet.
All right, Mr. Quintero.
I'm just going to reaffirm, in my opinion, this lot split had made absolutely no sense in this neighborhood, none. Size of the house, etc. This lot and its contours, a second home on this lot would have ruined the character of that neighborhood. It would absolutely not fit into the street where it would front. So there was no question in my mind that this was not appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quintero. Mr. Najarian.
Just a quick word on what will be seen as a dramatic reversal of my position held 2 weeks ago. I think I was rather too narrowly interpreting the code, and I don't like the look of the house. I will be voting in favor of the findings.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Najarian. I have one last speaker card that was submitted late. Mike Mohill.
Mayor, Councilman, by a show of hands, of these 5 gentlemen here, how many are an architect in background? Show of hands, please. How many is a landscape architect? Who has a degree in fine arts degree? Who has a degree in construction? Who has a design in background, designing something? I asked you this question for one simple reason. About a month ago, a man by the name of Al Hoffman came before you and wanted to become on the part of the Arts Commission. And Mr. Draymond, you said he wasn't qualified because he didn't have an arts background. Am I correct?
You're not, but that's all right.
So now we have 5 people who are all up here now who claim to be architects, fine arts degree, construction designer.
No.
You have none of this stuff. Honestly. So we need a commission. I might suggest the process should be a little bit different. Because but once a month I'm up here and I see you 5 gentlemen change your hats to be designers. You act like the Supreme Court of the city when it comes to design of houses, of apartment buildings, commercial buildings. Yet you have no degree in design. Yet Mr. Hoffman, who wanted to be on the commission, you said he wasn't qualified. Perhaps what we should do is create a Supreme Court for design for the city and have like 5 members, 1 be a politician, 1 be an architect, 1 be somebody from the city attorney's office. I mean, make up of 5 people or even 9 people. Because, every other week, you gentlemen spend time being the designers, and honestly, you don't wear the hat to have that background. Why don't we get some experts in the design commission to help us all make the decisions? It's very disturbing. I don't have a background. I'm an amateur horticulturalist. Okay? Does that make me qualified to be a designer of homes and commercial buildings? But yet you want people who are going to go before these different commissions to have that background. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's troubling that every week someone brings before you a design, and you have a degree in. You're a lawyer, okay, an engineer, which is all great, but nobody has a degree in landscape or design or endless fine arts. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Oh, but forgot to say, next week I won't be here. I'm going to be at the Glendale Symphony. I forgot. Me. You'll be happy.
Youth Symphony.
Glendale Youth
Symphony.
Youth Symphony. Thank you, Mr. Mo. All right. Very good. That was our last card. Is there any other debate on this item from the colleagues? All right. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Right, go.
Can we go and design a pool now?
Thank you.
Just for my colleagues' edification, there is a slight distinction that some of you may have heard of. It's called an election. And that's how these council members of whatever background qualify to make these decisions. But in any case. All right. Mr. Kasakian, let's go back, if we can, to item 8B, like boy.
8B was the item brought before you from Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, and it was a proposed Pacific Pool development work at Pacific Park. We had already read this into the record.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. I appreciate that. All right. Mr. Chapchin.
Thank you, Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council.
Do you have your swim fins and your water wings?
You know, I brought some goggles, but I left them downstairs.
Right.
You know, don't have those with me.
Let's dive right in.
Okay.
Sorry.
As you know, we came before you on September 16 and presented to you a basic 4-lane pool concept plan. You gave us direction to go back, look at several things. One is see if we can expand that to 6 lanes, eliminate some of the stair areas, explore solar power, and also look at increasing the shade area. We're going to give you 4 options. We have a PowerPoint presentation that Dave Ahern, our project manager, capital projects manager, will present to you. These vary between $7.9 million to about $10.4 million, and each design offers incremental yet substantial increases to the swim and recreation component of the Pacific Pool. In combination, they address the needs of many of the user groups. We do have $6.6 million available for the project currently. We have identified some additional funds, and Dave will go through that in the PowerPoint presentation. We've worked these with the consultant as well as our in-house pool staff, who have a combined 24 years experience just operating pools as lifeguards and pool managers. So we've thought out a number of the design features on the pool project. So with that, I'd like to invite Dave Ahern, our capital projects manager, up to go through the PowerPoint presentation of several of the options that we're going to outline.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahern. Mr. Yusefian, you have your hand up.
Mr. Mayor, last time we discussed this pool project, I think some of us made it very clear that we wanted to get some numbers as far as what it will cost to demo the Todd lot. What does it cost to build a new Todd lot? And so on and so forth. So some specific numbers. And not here unless you have it in your little folder there if you want to tell us. So while you give your presentation, I would appreciate if those numbers also come up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Ahern.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Dave Ahern, Capital Projects Manager for the Parks Department. When we last presented the project to you, we showed you a 4-lane design, and that design had shade structures, it had water play area in it,
It had a maintenance building, a pool building that had locker rooms and restrooms and lifeguard facilities, and then the cost of that was about $5.4 million. Your direction to us was to, at that time, was to bring you back a redesign of this facility and focus in the following 6 areas. 6 or more swim lanes, reduce the concrete paving where possible, increase the area of the shade structures with either structures or trees, remove the full-length stairs that we had shown in the 4-lane option or reduce them to a much less significant size, to explore energy conservation systems, including solar and photovoltaic, and to identify potential additional funding sources that could fund this larger pool design. So what staff has done in working with the project design team, and we have the project designers here for the pool. We also have our recreation staff here who manage our existing aquatics programs and all of our aquatics programs for that matter. So we have all our experts here tonight to answer whatever questions you might have. We came back with 4 options for your consideration, and here's the first. We labeled the previous option that we showed you as the 4-lane pool as option A. So we've brought you 4 new options. We start with option B, and that's a 6-lane pool. So we're adding 2 lanes. We're reducing the entry steps that ran the full length of the pool, 75 feet, and those are now about 15 feet. We've enlarged the shade structures. Still have 4 shade structures. We've enlarged those to about double their prior area. We've reduced a lot of the existing concrete paving. As you know, that Pacific Edison has a large concrete plaza, so we've added landscaping and turf wherever we could, and we've added landscaping in the new area of construction where the pool is. So we've gone from about 9,000 square feet of turf area and landscape to about 15,000 square feet. We've added, in this model, we've kept the pool depth, and this is a significant component. In the 4-lane pool, we were showing a pool depth of 3.5 feet to 5 feet. We keep that same pool depth here. So this is, this first option really gives you much of what you saw before with making the minimal changes that address the council's direction from before. So our cost on this is estimated, and of course these are very rough numbers right now because we're working in concepts. We don't have construction drawings to do cost estimating. So these are concept numbers, and we're certain that our real numbers when we get to that stage will be lower, but at this stage we're working with estimates. So that's our option B. It gives you 2 more lanes. It reduces the steps, enlarges the shade, enlarges the children's playground area from about 3,400 square feet to 5,000, 3,400 to 5,000 square feet for the playground, and reduces the turf.
What is that blue?
I can say, Mr. Mayor, if I can, that blue doesn't denote water then?
No. That's the play surface area.
Okay, it's not water.
No.
Oh, all right.
And Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I hate to say this. I don't know if you guys got this last time when we went through the exercise when we were doing the project down south. Remember?
I wasn't here last time for that.
I don't know why Park does this. There are certain things that are synonymous with water, and that's blue. Mm-hmm. When you put green, I'm assuming it's going to be grass, not concrete. And last time they showed all these green areas down in Adams Hill. Guess what? They were all concrete, not grass. So could you please pick colors? If it's a surface color, make it in brown or something of that nature. Because I'm looking at that thing and I'm going, wow, more water.
No, I completely understand, and we'll make sure we correct that in the future.
Also, if you look up at what the TV monitor is showing, you'll see that the same image up there shows the turf area as tan with the pool areas as bright blue, which is different than the slide we're looking at.
Right.
Just FYI.
Okay, we'll fix that. So this is our first option. In our next option,
we also provide you with a 6-lane pool. The difference in this pool is that now we go to greater pool depth. We go to 3.5 feet to 13.5 feet. And it, of course, increases cost, but it also gives you the ability to have some of the activities that council had expressed an interest in, such as water polo, competitive swimming, diving, scuba lessons, things of that nature. We add a pair of 1-meter diving boards. We add a spray area along with the water play. So that's a distinction. The water play is kind of a wading pool with splash buckets. The spray is more of the active spray recreational components. So that significantly enlarges that recreational component of this pool facility, and of course that adds cost to it as well. We also add a water slide with a reception pool. Another recreational element. And here in this option, what we're really attempting to do, and all throughout this design and the prior designs, we're trying to balance the activities that occur here in the input that we've had from the community. There's certainly strong input for swimming and diving. There's also strong desire to have recreational components. So just at the staff level, we think that perhaps this option does the best job of balancing those two interests with cost. It gives you 6 lanes, it gives you diving, gives you water polo, but it also gives you all the recreational features that families and younger children might enjoy. Like the prior option, we reduce the entry steps. The increased landscape areas present, these increased shade structures, and also the relocated playground is at that 5,000 square foot level, as we talked about. So the cost here is about $9.2 million, rounding the numbers. So that's option C. Then our next options are options D. Option D is all the elements are the same as what you saw in the last option. The real difference here is it's a 7-lane pool, and the cost goes up $450,000 to $500,000 for the additional lane. Then in our last option, option E, it's the same as the prior 2 options, with the exception that it provides you with 8 lanes. So in this option, we're really trying to maximize the use of the site, provide an 8-lane pool, again with a number of water recreational activities for families and children, and again we maintain the tot lot. So those are the 4 options. I'll go into some more cost discussions. Let's go to our next slide. So just to recap our cost, what we had previously showed you was a 4-lane pool at about 5.4, and you can see that these costs graduate as the design goes up. Option B increases about option A to option B, your cost goes up about $2.4 million. Option B to option C, it goes up about $1.4 million. Option C to D goes up about $450,000, and then D to E goes up another $450,000. The difference between option B, this what we call the 6-lane basic pool, and option E, which is the largest facility, is about $2.3 million. So we've tried to give you a range of options. Clearly, these are not the only options that you could have, but these are ones that we're presenting for your consideration tonight. Let's hit our next slide. You've asked for cost on different elements in the pool. Again, these are rounded numbers, approximate costs. The water slide's about $500,000. We've also given you some concept of staffing these additional water recreational components, have operational costs, and these again are estimated figures that will, with the water slide, you have to add 2 staff members to manage that component, and for a summer operation, it's about an additional $8,300 in M&O costs. The splash and play, again, it's about $500,000, and that would add about $4,000 in terms of staffing for having somebody dedicated to watch that area. The spray element, once you have somebody watching the splash, you don't have to add another person. You've got somebody there, so we're not adding a cost for that. The shade structures, again, these are ballpark numbers, and they include all the soft costs. They're about $100,000. There's no real operational cost for those. So those are the elements.
Is that a monthly cost?
No, that's a total construction cost.
No. The M&O.
The M&O cost was for the summer, for a 3-month summer, and we'll break that out for you a little more.
That's a 3-month cost?
Approximately.
Okay.
Mr. Starber? No? Okay. So then we take this and give you the 6-lane pool option C and the 8-lane pool option E, and try and give you kind of two ends of the spectrum here and what these operational costs will be. Now, this includes heating, utilities, and staffing costs. Heating utilities are somewhere in the neighborhood of $75,000 to $100,000, and then the rest are staffing costs for operating these facilities. So we give you a summer operation, July to September, extending it by a month, really Memorial Day, the end of May, to Labor Day, and then we give you a year-round cost. And we give it to you for the 6 and the 8-lane pool. With that, we give you what potential revenues are estimated to be. And in these estimates, I believe we're looking at an entry fee of either 50 cents or $1, something in that range, as what we heard in our last visit to the council with this project. You wanted a modest cost for entry to the facility. So those are our estimates on operating costs. And then lastly, in addressing council's direction to us, we looked at sources of funds. We currently have, since our last meeting, the CDBG committee and the council approved an additional $1.5 million to the project. That gets us to the current funding of $6.6 million. We have a potential total cost of about $10 million. So we've looked at a couple of ways to provide options for the council with that. One is a pending fee, housing development fee that was targeted specifically for Pacific Edison from the Algimax project, and that fee is $978,000. We also have another project that's currently funded in the capital CIP budget with redevelopment funds, and that's the Griffith Manor Park, and we have $3 million budgeted for that. We have a prelim master plan that we're just, it's a concept plan that we're just getting through and getting ready to bring before the council. But if it were council's desire, we could put that plan on hold for a while, and council could consider using those funds. If that were the case, then staff, as I say in the staff report, we look for other ways to fund that. One would be to use future CDBG dollars, and then we'd find some new park development dollars. That would delay Griffith Manor about 18 months in terms of the start of that project. Our estimate right now on that Phase 1 master plan for Griffith Manor is about $1.5 million to do that project. Then subsequent phases, depending on what council wanted to put in that park, community buildings, things of that nature, land acquisition, could, of course, increase those costs. So we've identified some sources of funding. Those aren't, of course, the only sources, but those are a couple that seemed reasonable to staff, so we wanted to present those for your consideration. Our next slide is kind of our look at next steps, how we would move forward depending on the direction from tonight. And again, this is an estimated schedule. If council wanted us to fast-track this schedule or handle the schedule differently, we could certainly do that as well. So that's...
Sorry, the reason I'm chuckling, Mr. Ahern, is...
Yes, sir.
I wonder, is there a school of PowerPoint production? Because I noticed that every PowerPoint ends with the last slide that says next steps, and I was just curious. So I'm sorry. anyway.
That's what they have their degree in, right? They PowerPoint.
All right.
We thought coming attractions would be too much, so we stuck with next steps. To answer Councilman Yusefian's question, the demo on the tot lot is estimated at about $250,000. That includes capping utilities, grading, demolition. There's a lot of concrete. It's not just the tot lot, so there's a lot of concrete. What we can use on site or recycle changes our cost. Our construction experts that have a lot more experience with this and these numbers are here tonight, and we can drill down if you have...
How much to build a new tot lot?
I don't know that we have that number.
That's a part of the,
It's a part of the total project budget.
Yeah.
It's in the, just construction cost is about $300,000 without the soft costs.
So between the two, taking the old one out and putting a new one in.
That's $550,000.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, sure.
I keep hearing conflicting stories about the existing play splash area. It's working just fine. It doesn't work. There's something wrong with it. What's the status of it?
Well, Mayor Draymond, to my knowledge, it works fine. It's a small amenity in a larger playground, so it's one piece of a playground.
Can we go back to the graphic you had up there, the first design graphic that was up
Sure.
there?
We're going to go back to the
First design image.
Option A. All the way back.
Okay, thank you. Can you show us with that design, if this were sort of an overlay, where the existing tot lot is?
Yeah, it'd be difficult for me to do it at this point. We'd be...
Not the tot lot, the spray area specifically.
Spray splash.
It's in the center of the tot lot. It's a fairly small area, probably the size of the well here.
So it's sort of sitting out in the middle of this area is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Please let me not keep you from ending your PowerPoint, and then we'll come back to the rest of the questions.
Mercifully, I'm done, Mayor Draymond.
All right.
Unavailable for whatever questions you may have.
All right. I know what the next steps are. The next steps are, let me go to my colleagues. Mr. Yusefian.
I'd like to go back to the 6-lane pool design, the first one.
The first one, okay. Option B.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. If I just wanted to build just a pool, okay, that's it. Just want to build that. How much of the tot lot I would lose? And would I lose the spray and splash?
Designer.
Yeah, let's get our designer up here. Here we go.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Larry Ryan. I'm a principal with RJM Design Group. If I understand your question correctly, is could we just build the pool without disturbing the spray and splash component that's out there now? I don't believe so. The extent of construction and infrastructure to get that pool in place and to create that pool component is going to be very disruptive out there to all the existing infrastructure. The likelihood of having that pool interface into that existing development without just wreaking havoc at best would be optimistic.
That was not my question.
It's okay, it was my question, so I just want to ask it later.
Right, because I've built pools in places without disturbing the landscaping next to it, so I know how that can be done. It's a little bit difficult, but nevertheless it could be done if people were careful in how they dig it up instead of, a bunch of rhinos in the middle of the field. Nevertheless, my question was, if I just wanted to build that pool, how close does that come with the spray and splash? Is the pool in the way of the spray splash? I want to know, that's what I'm trying to find out. How far is the spray splash area? Is it where that round thing is right now?
Yeah.
Do we have an existing design of the park so we can expose it on top so we know where the existing stuff is?
If I can help Councilman Yusefian, what may happen is, it is right by the corner of the pool, right about where Peter's pointing to.
Okay.
Yet we have piping that goes where the pool is, straight across to the valves, which are right next to that building. So most of the plumbing goes right across, and right where that building is, Peter, right, the restroom. Right up, there's an underground vault that's there, that's servicing the splash area.
If the pool was turned around and moved up north, would that work without disturbing that area?
It may. I think it may work. I mean, that's something we can probably look at. It may work because it wouldn't go north of that area.
You'll have the same configuration, you just turn it.
Yeah, and again,
put it on the top section. I hope you understand where I'm going with this. I'm trying to get a 6-lane pool there and get it in a low enough a cost without disturbing too much of what's existing there. If you don't have to put the spray and splash and there's another $500,000 there, another $250,000 there, another $300,000 there. Next thing you know, you add up to a few bucks. So I'm trying to see if there's a way to do this to stay within our budget and also get what we are looking to get.
We should take another look at it because there are several components to that spray area, and they're spread out. There's a little ball that's down further south, and then there's some palm trees further north of there. So we'd really have to take a look at the plans to see how much that would be impacted and see if we can.
Chaption, let me, since and to the gentleman that was there, I think the two questions were actually the same question, the one I was asking, the one Mr. Yusefian was asking, and the answer to your question is yes. That is what in essence we were asking. Is there a way to retain the existing spray splash area and still have this design, whether it's turned in some other fashion or other? But rather than try to answer it here, I think we have a general answer, and the general answer is we're not sure, but it ranges from doubtful to we're not sure. When we come back to it, can we see a diagram that shows that or a design that shows that and something a little more?
We'll do an overlay.
Thank you. I think that's what Mr. Yusefian was asking, an overlay.
You read my mind. That's exactly. And the other thing that I would like to see is, let me tell you right off the bat, I am not for diving, 13 foot, I'm not for it. Although I am for water polo, I would like to see a 6-lane that will have a 6-foot depth, because I think my colleague checked, and that's regulation. Is it 6 foot exactly, or what is it?
Minimum of 1.8 meters.
Whatever that ends up being, so you don't push off the floor. So that's what we like to see, so this way at least people can do the water polo. A lot of people are taking diving boards out of their own houses because insurance companies just won't insure. There's a lot of liability involved in that. Also, 13-foot depth, that's an awful lot of water we have to heat and, put in there, so I'm not into that. But I do like the concept of a 6-lane pool. I like the concept of having a 6-foot depth or whatever that regulation is for water polo. And if there's a way to reconfigure this so we can save as much as the structures that are there so we can minimize that cost is what I like to take a look at.
I believe that's 78 inches, right? Well, 2 meters would be 78 inches, I think, so, or approximately anyway. Okay, Mr. Najarian.
6 or 72.
First off, I'd like to comment on the article in the news press, which perhaps put my comments in a crass light, where I wanted the most expensive pool and the grandest pool. That's that's not exactly what I said. I was then, and I am now, still very much in favor of the 8-lane pool. I think I'd be willing to give up some of the depth, the 13-foot depth, for something around the 6-foot range, but increase it to the 8 lanes. But I think the critical issue that you're hearing from all of us is, obviously, the budget is tight. We're almost there with our funding. So we need to make this pool project work with the money that we have, or that is very likely to come in. I'm not talking about raiding necessarily the Griffith Manor project, but I think in terms of the current construction industry, I'm not sure when our rough estimates were made, and even Dave says that these are rough on the high side. If you take into account most realistic prices and perhaps the falling bids from the industry, I'd really like to see us sharpen those pencils and get down to something in this $8 million range, which I think we're almost there. The 6.6 plus the what was the other million that was coming from Algemax, to come back with something that is close to the 8 lanes. I think we could sacrifice the diving, try and value engineer this project to maintain the existing, what'd you call it, the splash and splish?
Yeah, splash and play.
Splash and play. I mean, we definitely need, I don't want to get into my whole song and dance, people. I mean, you know where I am on this. We really need this, but we need to, in this atmosphere and environment, come back with something very, very economical, the best economical and efficient pool design. We shouldn't think of this as, hey, the city's got a lot of money, just wipe the slate clean and design a pool. We're working within a budget. We haven't even spoken about the maintenance and operations. I have some thoughts on that as well, but let's not get to that right now. I'd like you to come back with a very tight design, try and get the 8 lanes. Not necessarily. I agree there's a lot of liability issues with the diving boards, but the 8 lanes will give us a lot of use in that pool, and try and save the top lot, the spray and splash. And now you've got me talking like that, Mr. Giuseppe.
That's what it's called. I'm sorry, I didn't make it up.
To save, if we save a few $100,000 there, a few $100,000 here, I think we're almost there with this project.
If I may, I think we're giving you 4 options. Staff really feels the 6-lane option is optimal in terms of when you start adding 7 and 8 lanes, you don't really gain a whole lot. You can still do the same programming with the 6 lanes. Sometimes you'll end up having a lane or 2 just empty and not being used. But your cost for M&O really increases dramatically when you go 7 and 8 lanes. We hear what you're saying. We'll certainly take that back. In water polo, it'll end up being north and south or however, but you understand some of that you'll be standing because you need at least 25 yards for water polo. So you can either practice, you won't be able to play, I think, official games, but my understanding even the high schools have depth problems with some of the water polo features. But we hear what you're saying. I think the 6-lane pool is optimal in terms of when we looked at M&O and what you can do and can't do with the extra 2 lanes. So we'll come back and tighten, draw it.
Let me go to Mr. Quintero and the city manager.
Okay, I am very happy we're having this discussion. We're getting close. It's almost like a water polo game. We're just coming to the end of the game. I'm for option B. I think that's a great idea. I do think we can bring it in at a reasonable cost. I would like to examine the idea of going to a 6-foot 6 depth or whatever it is that water polo practice could at least take place. and I would prefer not to save whatever we can by not moving the kids' splash area. But at the same time, I don't feel that comfortable that families with little kids are going to actually have to pay a fee just to have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old splash around the area. So we're going to have, it's going to be enclosed. We're going to be paying Glendale residents will be paying a fee to get into the pool. But if the splash area is in the pool, then some mom is going to have to pay for the little kid. So let's see what we can do to get around that problem. Then in terms of the utilities that you mentioned, one of the best ways, without question, the best way to reduce the utilities is going to make sure that we get involved with some solar panels and work with GWP to help us out on that. And then finally, in terms of taking money away from Griffith Manor, absolutely not. I don't want a dime taken away from that particular park. There's very little park space in that west end of town, so we have to move forward as quickly as possible to bring Griffith Manor Park to fruition. They've been waiting a long, long time. And it's literally, as I look at our park system, it's the one most in need of repair, the one that's in worse shape. So we absolutely have to do something for those residents. But anyway, I'm very happy with the design and the progress we're making. So let's just keep the pedal to the metal and let's go ahead and finish this off as soon as possible.
If I can just get some clarification, as you know, the splash area out there is a little limited, and you're absolutely right. Charging moms just to use that small area is going to be hard to do. Do you mind if we look at maybe upgrading that? And I don't know, maybe we can bring you both. So that it makes it kind of more attractive for people to come in. Or else we may have to just fence off the pool and leave that other area alone, if we can. We'll take a look at that.
And as a matter of fact, the last time I was there, I guess a few weeks ago in the evening, still warm, I talked about how all of Pacific Park was being used. Every last activity was being used. There were some little kids running around the...
Yeah. No, it works. We've had some issues with it over the years. We had to change out all the valving systems at one point and vault it underground. I think there's some water pressure issues with it at this point, but they do work. I mean, we'll have to take a look at the water pressure.
All right. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was pleased to hear Mr. Najarian's concerns over economy and budget. Before you see the next iteration of this, you will have had probably 2 study sessions focused on the budget. And it seems to be my role to play to be Mr. Scrooge in some of these areas. But focusing on economy and keeping this project within budget, especially being sensitive to the operating costs, I think is going to be very important as we continue to watch the state and national economy evolve and its implications for our own budget, which is going to be very, very challenging, both in capital as well as operating costs is going to be very important. But you'll have at least one, if not more, of those study sessions before you see this project again before you.
So may I inquire your middle initial E? Does that stand for Ebenezer? Or?
That sounds good.
Okay. Good. Just asking.
A mantle I'm willing to carry.
All right. By the way, what was the anticipation of, where do we anticipate that little less than $1 million from Algimax was going to go?
It wasn't designated for anything specific. Oh, for Pacific?
Pardon me. It's a project impact fee.
No, I understand that. I mean, specifically.
It is specifically directed to Pacific Edison Park.
No, I know. Had we assigned a use for it within the park, is what I'm saying.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's go to the public. And our first speaker is Nancy Kent, followed by Evelyn Hansen.
Hi, my name is Nancy Kent, resident of Glendale. Especially in light of the current economy, please focus on the objective of a swimming pool and leave it to private industry to build an amusement park. Postpone tonight's master plan decision until you get a ballpark estimate for the solar, water heating, and photovoltaic cells. Municipal swimming pools often have zero landscaping because they're located in parks. Pacific Park has lots of trees and plants. The existing trees in this plaza grow and provide more shade every year. So don't make taxpayers crazy by spending money to pull out these trees in order to replace them with landscaping. Don't make taxpayers even crazier by spending money to remove the existing free tot lot, which has a water feature, and then build a new tot lot that's fenced off unless you pay to use the swimming pool. All four designs include way too much new concrete surfaces. The deck should be large enough to provide plenty of room to walk and sunbathe, but not so wide that it's a playground. Kids should play in the huge park outside the pool area. Without overly wide concrete deck areas, amusement park features, tot lot, lawns, and the botanical garden, I think you can build an 8-lane pool complex with a footprint approximately half of what's in the four new designs. And remember, every extra amusement park and landscape feature will add to the annual maintenance cost. The extra features that can help for decades to decrease the anxiety-producing cost of operation are the solar water heating and photovoltaic cells. Please do not follow the recommendation to wait for the next round to integrate solar equipment into the plan. And since it does not make sense to put solar equipment near trees, why are 3 of the 4 shade structures placed among the trees? If you build a regular municipal swimming pool instead of an amusement park botanical garden, perhaps the $10 million available will buy the pool and the solar equipment. The steps into the pool, how high and wide are they? And is there a railing beside them? No dressing rooms are needed, but a little revenue could be made with 1 or more small coin-operated dressing rooms. Lockers have a mixture of free bring-your-own-lock and coin-operated. Have see-through fencing on all 4 sides. And hygiene, are the practices of outdoor showering just before entering a public pool and a mandatory walk through a very shallow pool to kill germs on people's feet just obsolete curiosities from the 1950s? Can the metal benches in this plaza be reused inside the pool area? And last point, where's the lifeguard station? Thank you. And here's a summary of my points.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kent. I think I may be one of the obsolete curiosities from the mid-1950s. All right, Evelyn Hansen, please, followed by Herbert Milano.
Hi, Evelyn Hansen, longtime resident of Glendale and former user of Glendale's public pools. And I remember the chlorine bath that you went through, so you didn't crack athlete's foot in for everybody. I'm going to be almost an echo of Ms. Kent's comments. I love photovoltaic and solar panels, but they don't mix with trees. They just don't mix with trees. You're going to cut these designs have way too many trees. You can take the trees are beautiful. I love trees too. They are great in a park. And grass doesn't, in my experience, doesn't really go well with pools. You get the chemicals from the pools kill the grass. And I don't know about you, but when I'm wet from a pool, I don't want to go sit on the grass. I think the photovoltaic and the solar panels are a fabulous idea. I think that we need a lot more photovoltaic in Glendale. I'd like to see them over every parking space, every bus stop shelter, every shade shelter in Glendale. I'd like to see them on the tops of parking structures. Put them all down Brand Boulevard. They're great. And GWP's got funding, and they'll pay for themselves. But they don't go under trees. You got to lose the trees in this if you're going to have either. Also, the solar panels are great. A great idea. I totally am back behind Mr. Weaver on that. But again, you can't do it with those trees. And I'm curious, the spray feature thing, is that going to be on the same water system as the larger pool? Because if you think about physics, the temperature of water is controlled by its surface area to volume. When you create a small drop, as in a spray feature, you lose all the heat that we're going to get from those solar panels. So it doesn't make sense to run water through solar panels to heat it up and then lose all that heat in a spray feature. And again, the spray thing and the whole tot with cement thing, you have a spray feature, kids are going to run through the sprinklers. We all did it when we were kids. Kids are going to run through the sprinklers. You got a sprinkler in there, they're going to be running through it because it's fun. Kids running on wet cement is a bad idea. If you texture the cement, you're going to have fewer falls, but more severe falls. You're going to have a lot more scraped knees. I don't think that 50 cents to get it for a parent to get their child into a wading pool is an exorbitant cost. I don't think it's a good idea to pull the tot lot out just to put a new one in. That kind of echoes the whole pull the pool out to put a new one in fiasco idea. I think on the whole, it's really great. You got to lose the trees. Plant them, but plant them out in the park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hanson. Herbert Milano.
Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council, my name is Herbert Milano. Well, this whole concept has been long in coming, and I applaud the city staff and the councilman, especially Mr. Najarian, for pushing and moving forward on getting this concept to fruition. I want to tell you that my advocacy for this type of facility has been active for over 5 years, I guess ever since we lost that other swimming pool at Pacific Park. But I have gone out there to visit the city that got the national award as the best and most responsive city with regard to parks and recreation, Henderson, Nevada. With a population of 230,000, 240, they have 10 aquatic facilities. It puts us to shame. Even the city of San Fernando just installed one, and you should go see it. Drive half an hour, and you will see a first-rate aquatic facility aimed for the children. And that's my point. To whom is this particular facility serving? It's serving the underserved areas of Glendale. It is aimed to serve kids, youth, who have very little things to do in the afternoon because there isn't sufficient funding for after-school programs. So a facility that has a water slide, and to make it attractive, kids who cannot afford to go into a $40, $50 a day type of water park, this is precisely what we want. We want to engage youth. We want to engage the small kids. That means that the water play area, I wish I had the pictures here with me to show you the water play areas that have guns and play areas that are fantastic in Henderson, Nevada, in many of those pools. The need to be able to have greenery and areas for the adults as well, so that they come in and watch over their kids. The idea of having a zero entry pool so that older adults can be grandpa and kids together and make it a multi-generational facility. Those are the things that are going to say who are we going to attract and how many of them are we going to bring. So I think that the water play area is way too small for the concept of bringing and turning this thing into a true entertainment area for kids that will be attracted to come in. If it is something small like that, yeah, no one's going to pay $1 or 50 cents to do it. But if you make it a true aquatic facility, and the examples are many. I mean, I could come in and bring you dozens and dozens of pictures of an idea that has already been tested and that is loved by communities where they have been put in place. With regard to the cost, I want to continue to mention the fact that if you live in Southern Glendale, like, recreational planning area 10, you get about 750 square feet per 1,000 people. And if you live in the northern parts of Glendale, or like where Mr. Weaver lives, you get 6 acres per 1,000 people. We have to fix the disparity, and we have to look at to whom it is that is meant to serve first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Mike Mohill, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Good evening. Well, at least we're not talking about $375 million tonight, or typographical error, commas and dots like we did last week. Timing is everything. And now is not the right time to build an aquatic center. Our city manager mentioned it, thank God, this few moments ago, money. We have contractual obligations to both the city firemen, fire department, and the managers within the city. Our reserves have dwindled. Right now, car sales are down. There are cars right now at the docks, Long Beach docks, because the dealers cannot sell them. Mervin's is going out of business. Linden's Plus, Ethan Allen's out of business. The tax base of the city is leaving us. Why are we taking this money and using it for an aquatic center? I'm for an aquatic center. I'm for helping the people in South Glendale. I'm the first one up there. But timing is everything. We should put this on the back burner, and when the economy is better. Right now, the middle class is becoming the homeless. Every day you read about people, middle managers are losing their jobs, and they're crying the blues. They're at the unemployment office. Pretty soon they'll be coming to you, Mr. Mayor, and asking for a handout to help reduce my utility bills, my water bill, my electric bill. These are stark realities. Why not build a 15-lane swimming pool? Let's go all out. But not this year. You even sent a letter to everybody, City News, that said, hey, watch your water. Don't use water. I'm not supposed to count how many drops of water I use for swimming, for taking my bath, drinking water, my lawn. The governor says cut your water usage. You even tell everybody to cut. How many gallons of water will this swimming pool use that you want, Mr. Nazarian? And how many of those gallons of water, how many households can use to that year's usage of water? Maybe that person who can't afford the water bill, you can pay it out of this budget. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everything that the people before me commented about the Senate is wonderful. I'm the first one here. I'll wave the flag. But not now. Why don't we wait a little bit longer when the economy turns around and we have money coming in? Because right now, I don't believe our revenues will exceed our expenses. If not, they'll just be making it. The Americana is wonderful. It's helping the economy of Glendale, but we need more than just the Americana. So please, gentlemen, we got contractual obligation with the fire department and the fire department, and they need their money, and they got their pensions coming too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mohill. Mr. Margaret Hammond. Sorry, Margaret. Got it.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff. My name is Margaret Hammond. I've lived here 50 years, and when that pool was put in Pacific, we thought it was wonderful in our area. Hey, man, look, the city's listening, looking at us. And then it was taken away. Now the thought is, just think, we'd save $10 million if you hadn't taken that pool out of there, wouldn't we? And and it was a wonderful pool. There wasn't a thing wrong with it. What replaced that pool? Parking lots and cement. That's what replaced the pool and the tennis courts that were there. Yeah, if you go down and look, I can tell you, because I used to take my grandchildren there every day and go in the pool. Grandma was in the pool with the kids. By the way, my kids learned to dive at that facility and they were only like 4 and 2-year-old. As a matter of fact, the baby was still in diapers when I used to take the youngest one, who is now 17, by the way. And I think that we need the pool, as many lanes as possible. We have a high-density area down there. You keep talking about the high density in that area with no pool. And I don't know, where would the nearest pool be? Would it be Glendale High? Now, that's kind of a lot of a distance away from Pacific, isn't it? And the people that use this pool do not have pools in their backyard. Think about that. You guys all do. They don't. So I'm sure they'd be more than willing to pay 50 cents to get in there to use that facility. And it's sure a heck of a lot cheaper than spending tens of thousands to put in a pool in their yard. And the other thing that it's, how many staff live in the area? Or how many people that are here advocating against or for or whatever live there and have ever used that pool? As I said, I speak of it because I have used it I used it for many years because of my neighbors and my grandchildren. And I do think that it should be more than 5 feet. I think it should be adaptable. There are a lot of teenagers in that area, and in the apartments, there are terrific density of young people in those apartments. To play polo or to do whatever, that would be something that would really, they would really benefit from. And as for the top lot, I went and looked at it again. I still can't understand why you want to just end up with nothing but a green area in that corner where the tot lot is, and it's going to cost us $250,000 to take it out, and $300,000, is that the figure? Yeah, to put it back. Kind of cuckoo to me. I mean, it's just like I say, if you hadn't taken this pool out in the first place, you wouldn't be needing to think about spending $10 million to put it back, would you? So I don't mean you guys, if you weren't involved in it, I just mean the council overall at that time. Thank you.
Okay, Margaret, thank you very much. All right, that was our last speaker card from the public on this item. Let me go to Mr. Weaver.
Make my comments, but I think these are just my own personal comments. You don't have to agree with them, and there'll be plenty that probably won't. A pool is definitely needed there, absolutely. But I'm looking at a community pool. You really think people live in La Crescenta and Montrose, East Glendale, North Glendale, are going to drive clear down the Pacific Edison to go swimming? I doubt it. They're not going to do it. It's a community pool for the people that live in one of the densest urban pieces of property in Glendale. Numerous kids are going to walk there. Their parents are going to walk there. I'm not going to build an aquatic center, or at least I'm not going to vote for it. It doesn't belong there. This is for the community that had a pool to begin with. I used to swim in the Keyhole, and that was more center. I think it had lanes, but I never saw any competitive swimming there. Maybe they did when I wasn't there, but it was a pool where all the kids just came down and jumped in. We didn't have a waiting area to walk in. It was shallow. At the Keyhole end, you could stand there in 2 or 3 feet of water, and it went down because they had high dives. But this is a community pool. Not to offend anybody, but in 20 or more years as a project manager, I designed many alternatives for projects. In my view, what I've looked at here today are variations on one alternative. They're not alternatives, they're variations on one. 6, 8, 10 lanes. A little more here, a little more there. Those are variations. I haven't seen alternatives. You want alternative? Well, then turn the pool 90 degrees. Move it to another section in it. Now you're starting to get an alternative. These are just variations on widths and depths. So, I didn't see them yet. It was mentioned about solar. My pool is solar heated. You have to have the solar panels about 23 degrees facing south to get the maximum exposure. My solar heating, it approximately gets to about 90 degrees, the output that comes out of those panels into the pool. During the summer, my pool heats up to approximately 86, 87 degrees, and I have to turn down the solar panels because they're heating it too much. Also, I cover the pool. I have an electric motor. I cover the pool. It retains the water. It doesn't evaporate, so I don't have to spend as much money filling the pool. It also retains the chemicals. I can let it go all winter without adding any chemicals and open up in the spring, and it's crystal clear. Just a little chilly and it has to heat up again. It's talked about San Fernando. San Fernando pool, yeah, I knew council people in the city of San Fernando. Final project, I think, was about double the cost that was estimated. Henderson, Nevada, well, let's see, Glendale's been here 102, 103 years. It's built out. I doubt if Henderson, Nevada has been there that long. And when you're master planning a city that's fairly new, you can spread out, you can put in all these parks and stuff. But our fathers that built this city decades ago weren't thinking of what was going to be in 2010, for instance. No way anybody could have dreamed the population of 15,000, 20,000 was going to get up 207,000, and that it was going to be so dense. There would be so many apartments. No way they could figure on that happening. So you can't compare us to Henderson and say, why aren't we doing it? We're a built-out city, one of the densest urban cities in the United States of America, and one of the very safest, by the way. And finally, the budget. We're going to look at a budget the next week or two, cutting $8 million plus this year and $8 million plus next year. That means layoff of personnel, cutting back of services. And we're going to sit here and tell the public that we're going to spend $5 to $10 million on a community pool in one sector of town. Essential services are what count in times like this, not the add-ons, the things that people would like, the amenities, the add-ons. You don't have that luxury when you're trying to be conservative. You can look at the money in the CDBG and CIP. CIP money could be put back in the general fund and used to keep some of the services that we may have to cut. CDBG could be put back into projects in that area that would get more bang for the buck. Griffiths Park Manor, other community parks in the area. But to sink everything into this at this time, with the economy the way it is, makes absolutely no sense. So because of that, and because I haven't seen alternatives, I won't support anything. I'm going to lose, but I cannot justify to myself or the people out there that I will come in contact with how we could spend $8 to $10 million. It may be a good election year item to put out there. Hey, I voted for a pool. Yeah, fine. I want one too. When the economy turns around, I'll be on top of it, and I will ask for legitimate alternatives to doing this. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Weaver, thank you. Before we continue on, I just want to, I'd like to try to focus this discussion a little more.
So be it.
Last time we were here, we were sort of all over the map with these four folks who actually were just making a presentation. It became a discussion of a million different options. I'd like to focus this a little bit because if you take a look at what is actually on the agenda, there's nothing there that's telling me that what we're talking about here is a freewheeling design studio. We do actually have an item that we're supposed to be addressing here. So I'd like to try to draw the focus of the conversation back to that and see if we can either come to a conclusion to support something here or some other alternative, not necessarily another alternative that we're going to figure out, design that we're going to figure out tonight. If there's another design we want to talk about or some other alternatives, I believe we can instruct them to do that, but that's not what's on the agenda. So.
Okay, well, I'll say once again, option B, the 6-lane, go a bit deeper for possible water polo and other activities. Try to make the Kid Splash accessible without fees, and try to retain the existing infrastructure if, in fact, it's working. Absolutely work on the solar panels and any other type of renewable energy source. And that's it. I mean, I'm ready to move on if they come back. If we need to realign the pool rather than have it in the configuration that was shown in the different options, and that's fine. But that's it. I'm satisfied.
Okay. Mr. Najarian.
Just to be clear, I don't think that any of those options in any way qualify as an aquatic complex. You want an aquatic complex? Go to the Rose Bowl. Go to Santa Clarita, go to La Mirada, go to San Fernando, whose pool, by the way, is paid entirely by grant money. They're in a little bit different situation. We have deprived our residents of a pool for too long. This is not a luxury. I see this really as a necessity that was taken away from our residents. I don't know which one of you guys were on council when this Pacific pool project went through, when the Pacific Edison project went through. That's when the pool was taken away. Those of you who were involved in that, I think, owe it to the residents to bring it back. And it's not just a pool. Don't think of it just as analogous to a soccer field. This is something where toddlers are going to learn how to swim. Youth are going to learn how to do water polo. Seniors are going to do jazzercise. kids are going to learn synchronized swimming, let alone just jumping in the hot weather, jumping into the pool to cool off. I don't think there's any single amenity in this city that is going to increase the quality of life. Where's Mr. Milano? Quality of life, gentlemen, than a swimming pool. It's going to help kids save themselves from drowning. We're going to teach kids to do sports. We're going to get seniors active again. Not to mention the entire realm of athletic and recreational possibilities for those who are physically handicapped. Get someone who has trouble walking or is confined to a wheelchair, get them in the water, their life changes just 180 degrees. People will come from all over the city to use this pool. We just saw some water polo kids the other day. They went to Chicago to compete. They traveled to Monterey Park, to Los Angeles to train. I know that our Crescenta YMCA swim team travels to Monterey Park, to Los Angeles, and other places to get extra pool time. This is something that will be used by all the community. What I really think we need to focus on is to get us the very best product that you can, whether it's looking at a different type of alternative, reconfiguring the pool to a different location. I'd love for you to come back with an $8 million budget and give us an 8-lane pool. But I think what you're hearing from us is we are sensitive to the budget realities, both the capital and on the operation and maintenance side. Go back and bring us something much more efficient and economical than what we have now. Not to discount any of your hard work, but sharpen those pencils again and get us something that fits our budget and fits our needs.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Mr. Weaver.
Just like add one thing. For every hour that you have an organized sport in that pool, the neighborhood kids can't get in. So how are you going to split the baby so the neighborhood kids after school, after homework, want to come down, jump in the pool, but they find a water polo team there or synchronized swimming or something else going on, just like tennis courts or anything else? How are you going to share all that time? That'll be another thing to work out on.
All right, Mr. Najarian.
Well, I just want to say that I know a little bit about pools. People will be lining up at that pool at 5 a.m. in the morning to do laps and do swimming, and typically pools are reserved for those kind of swimming nuts between 5 and 9. Between 9 and noon, you've got seniors, general recreational swimming, and you'll have to kick the teams out at 11 o'clock at night. Am I right, Courtney? Yes. Thank you. And so we don't need to worry about that. I think it's great that we are going to have a high demand for that pool. We're not saying reserve it for any one group or another group, but it's a pool that's going to bring us all together in this community, all income levels, all ethnicities, all socioeconomic levels. Hallelujah, let's do it.
All right, Mr. Yusefian, hallelujah. Brother Yusefian.
Amen.
I think I made my comments very clear, and to put it more succinctly, I think Mr. Quintero pretty much spelled it out, what I'm looking for. I do not want to disturb the current play area for the kids. I do not want to disturb the splash area. Find a different location for the pool. And I don't want to charge for people to go and play in the little play area for the kids. But I think you need to fence off the pool so people who want to use the pool can play there. I will say if I had to do it myself, I will get on it right away. Economy is the way it is. Cost of cement is down, copper is down, electrical equipment is down because nobody's building. So if you want to build this pool and get some economy going, construction one, this is the time to do it. And if the contractor tells you can't do it, tell him to go somewhere else. Because there's awful lot of construction workers out there unemployed looking for jobs. So you can bring this in below what you have shown me in here, and if you're not going to tear up the Todd lot, if you're not going to build a new splash and spray place, if you want to add a little bit of a, I don't know, some guns or water guns or whatever, that's fine, do that. But I think overall, we need to save as much as we can and still have our pool there. I definitely want a 6-foot deep. And I hate to disagree with my colleague all the way to my left, but when this is the only pool in the city, I don't care if you live in Timbuktu, you drive down to it. So it's the only pool. I mean, I know people who drive to Cucamonga because there's no soccer fields here. Go figure. If you want something bad enough, you'll drive to it. So I think this is one amenity that we lack in this city. We need to put it in. I think to an extent, the bad economy, to an extent, it's a blessing in disguise. Because if we're smart about it, we can get some good numbers to put it in there. But we can't just go too crazy and build something too big that the maintenance becomes very expensive down the line. That's it.
Mayor, could I just add one more thing?
Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Make sure you do a traffic study where all these cars are going to park, since the streets there are already crowded, the people using the rest of the park. So where are we going to park the cars that are coming from all over Glendale to use it? Make sure there's an analysis done.
All right,
Make sure there's no dinosaur bones where you do your excavation.
Exactly.
There may be some historical significance to that tot lot, actually, now that I think about it.
All right. All right.
Future president may have been going there.
All right, gentlemen. Mr. City Manager, you raised the issue, referred to yourself as Scrooge. So, Mr. James Ebenezer Starbird, which of these designs, in your view, represents our best shot at a more affordable M&O?
Well, the staff in the staff report presented the operating costs. It has to do more with the length of programming than necessarily the size of the pool.
Well, it may have to do with the depth of the pool, though.
Well, although I was rather surprised, assuming the cost estimates are accurate, I was rather surprised that for any given program, the going from a smaller pool to a larger pool had less impact on operating costs than I would have imagined. I don't know if you can quickly bring up that table.
Move it, guys, move it.
Referencing the staff report, and this I noticed when I was looking at the table up here. So let's say we had a limited summer operation as opposed to extended and year-round. So this would be the one where it's just going to be kids in the summertime, maybe some lessons, and maybe some lap swim in those crazy hours that Mr. Najarian referenced. But essentially, July. That's a 2-month operation. July and August, a 2-month operation. Not a lot of difference between a 6-lane and an 8-lane. I mean, $32,000 difference total between those two pool sizes. Bigger difference as you begin to extend the operation beyond just 2 months. And I cannot imagine, with the demand for pool, with the pent-up anticipation, that you as a city council will be able to suggest we build a $7 million pool and only operate it 2 months out of the year. I just can't imagine that's at all possible. So in all likelihood, we're going to have an extended summer or a year-round operation, in which case you have an $80,000 a year difference. That, frankly, it surprises me it's that little between a 6-lane and an 8-lane option, difference between option C and option E, because the facilities seem to get significantly larger. And yet the bigger difference is between a limited operation and a year-round operation. So, from the standpoint of operations, I don't think there's a big difference based on pool size as I look at these numbers, assuming they're accurate, and I certainly don't have any sense of whether they aren't, so I assume they are. Greater difference is, and I know you'll have a lot of pressure for this, there'll be a lot of pressure for a year-round operation. When the kids don't want to swim, there are those folks who will want to be doing laps. They'll be out there in the cold, and you'll be heating the pool, and you'll have a lot of pressure on you to have a year-round kind of operation, and you'll probably be up in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $750,000 a year. Because it'll be hard to build a nice pool and then say, we're only going to operate it 2 months out of the year.
With solar heating, you will be able to go longer season. It'll be warm. I know.
All right. Thank you. Well, I don't have anything to add in terms of recommendations, other than with regard to design, other than what has been mentioned. I'm still interested in knowing what we can do with the existing spray splash area, and a design that incorporates that in it. I also think that we're going to have to jettison the dive aspect of the pool and the extreme depth of the pool, and go to something that is like a 6 foot depth. What I'm going to suggest, unless there's more discussion, is that we try to come to some conclusion about a motion here, because unless we've had one suggestion from Mr. Quintero to go ahead and just pick option B, but I'm not sure I'm hearing consensus all the way around about that. So that is the only existing design that I've heard suggested that we give as direction. If we're not going to find consensus for option B, then I suggest that what we do, instead of make this motion, is provide more direction to staff and ask them to come back. So let's see where the consensus is. Mr. Yusefian.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion that the staff return to City Council by the first part of January 2009 with new revised design implementing some of the council's direction.
Mr.
I agree with that direction, with an emphasis on value engineering. Get us the most pool for the least amount of money. I mean, that's the bottom line here.
Different locations, save as much as you can from existing so we don't redo it.
Second that.
I'll second that.
Second week of, in first part of January, so so this way it doesn't drag on for us.
All right, Mr. Weaver.
I made very clear I'm not supporting anything until I have alternatives and the economy turns around.
Well, okay. Well, the alternatives part is what has just been suggested.
No, not the kind I've seen. I said variations on the alternative.
No, I heard the whole. I heard the whole thing. What I meant was that what has been suggested is alternatives rather than variations.
Okay. I support that part. But I'm not going to go beyond the design phase until the economy turns.
Okay. Mr. Quintero.
I agree, yeah.
Okay. All right. And I agree as well. So that is a motion. I mean, it was in the form of a motion. Do we need a motion?
Mr. Mayor, it was made and seconded.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is to come back with alternatives.
Yes.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Okay.
Yes. Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes.
Thank you.
May I say one thing?
Yes,
I hope you all brought your umbrellas. It's pouring rain out. I got a call back there, so.
Okay. Mr. Kazakian.
Otherwise you can...
He's right.
Okay. Next is...
Oh, she can just stay and watch the rest of the show.
Thank you. Next is oral communications.
They don't need a pool to get wet.
Folks. We're still in the middle of a meeting. Come on.
Discussion is limited time, is not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. And city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and report.
Folks, please. We're still in the middle of a meeting. Thank you. Okay. All right. First speaker is Anahid Panigian.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council, staff, and the audience. My name is Anna Hikpinajian. Last week, the fierce firestorm destroyed more than 1,000 homes and turned it to the ashes in disaster zone. We have all seen these images on TV, but no one knows that better than the people who have lost their homes. No words can describe the size of this devastation. When we saw a disaster, the first thought is we are all human beings, which leaves us with a moral obligation to help the fire victims, which is the greatest gift of the hope to survive. Today, on this holiday season, the season of sharing is especially helpful. If you make a donation that presents our concern toward our community, I made my donation to Red Cross last week. It is at times like this that I remember again 20 years ago when a natural disaster earthquake struck a region of the Armenia and destroyed 5 cities, Spidak, Leninagan, Girovagan, Stepanavan, and also 50 villages. Tens of thousands of men, women, and children perished within moments, crushed under debris of buildings. This loss was a heartbreaking tragedy. This region remains extremely vulnerable. On September 7, next month, there will be memory of the evening in remembrance of the 1988 earthquake victims. In this Thanksgiving holiday, I have a suggestion for you. Please join us on November 27 at the Armenian Fund's International Telethon to deliver hope to many whose lives lack the basic fundamentals of human dignity. It is these moral imperatives which shape our character as a people and our behavior as human beings. We are grateful for your support of Armenian Funds. Yesterday, I met with the Armenian Fund committee members. They told me you can make donation writing your check to the Armenian Fund in memo line for disaster zone. Thank you. I think Mr. Yusefian mentioned about that President of Garabakh on the same reason for the Telethon Armenia.
That's true.
Okay, you can watch this program on KCET Channel 18 again on Thanksgiving Day, which is from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Spinuzzi. All right, Margaret Hammond, followed by Heather Victor.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and members of the audience, here and out there. Number one, my name is Margaret Hammond, and of course I've lived here 50 years, as you all well know by now. I'm glad I'm telling you all that, so when I no longer remember, you'll be able to remind me of that, okay? Thank you. And by the way, Mr. Najarian, do you belong to that firm of Cunningham's and Savvy, or is that one you're going to form?
I gave up my law practice when I joined council.
Well, why not? One of the things I'd like to say with Thanksgiving coming up, just remember our neighbors up in Sylmar. Those 600 mobile homes alone, those people in there, most of them are low income, senior, and on very, limited incomes and so forth. So anything that we, who are really a neighbor city, who else, they're just over the hills, and we really should be thinking of the people in that area. I have friends who live in that area, as a matter of fact, belong to groups here in Glendale. One of the things, again, I would like to bring up is about the parking, the hours, the fees, and the validation. For instance, I was at Billy's the other night. I hadn't been there for a while. And there was a lady in there trying to get validation. They used to give validation, I think, for the parking structure next door. And apparently they didn't. They weren't. And she was very upset about it. She said, well, I think it was still up on the window. But then I said to her, well, you get 90 minutes free. But it turned out she wanted to go to something at the theater, the Alex. So she was trying to get additional validation to go to the theater. And she said, and it really makes me mad, she said, last week I got a ticket because she hadn't noticed the 6 to 10. And I said to them in Billy's, you got to make sure that you're telling people that those, I mean, there is a what do you call those horses with the sign on, you know. I saw that, and I thought, oh, that's good, like I watch when I go around, you know, the different parking. But apparently, a lot of people don't read them, and they're very. So I would think that maybe if there could be something brought up, maybe even every week at City Council to remind people, hey, remember when you go in the lots that they're from 10 to, from 6 to 10 now, and that you know, you need to be aware of that. But she was very upset, and there were some other people in there, and they were all chit-chatting about it, and I went like, okay, you know, I said, I know, but it's sad, but that's the way it is to do business. The other thing is the mobile antennas. Is that meeting going to be open to the public that you're going to be having with that T-Mobile whatever? I've had a lot of people calling me from my homeowners groups about that. They're very disturbed, and it is going to be brought up on our agenda at the Glendale Coordinating Council. That's something that's coming up. I'll just tell you about that one. And I do want to thank Mr. Zern for the trash pickup. I think by the time I got home from City Council last week, the trash was picked up. I'm kidding, but I mean, it was the next morning when I came down the street, it was gone. So I do want to thank you for your attention to that, and I just wish there was some way we could stop those people from littering like that and causing us to have to keep calling you, but it's unbelievable, and it's on that same area all the time. Thank you again. And the other thing is, and here I go, spirit of Dr. Espiritu, the handicap entry to that building over there on stilts is horrendous. And believe me, I know, because I have suffered the last couple of years through when they were doing the work on it, trying to go up and down the ramps, tried to go up the back stairs to get up there one at a time. And I just had to go there again this week on a matter. And the Design Review Board, I guess it was, or the planning, one of them. And I had a heck of a time. There was no way I could get down the darn stairs, and to go all the way around, I would have had to go all the way out to Glendale Avenue, go back out, go to Glendale Avenue, come back in, walk down the ramp, go around the back of the building. I went like, this is nuts. I'd rather take a chance and walk down the stairs. Has anybody walked that handicap entrance into that building? Try it. Believe me. I'm not lying to you. Why would I? I'd look like a fool if I were. So I'm just saying, I really had a hard time. And matter of fact, a friend of mine, Randy Carter, was there and kept looking at me. I was determined to get down the stairs to that building. And it's a good flight of stairs when you have two bum legs, never mind one. Thank you again, and I hope you have a good Thanksgiving and enjoy it with your families.
Thank you, Margaret. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Heather Victor, followed by Marguerite Lincoln.
Good evening. I'm Heather Victor. I live at 1535 North Pacific. I have an incredible, beautiful home in a great neighborhood, which I rented for a while, moved out, 2 weeks later, went and bought it because of the neighborhood and how wonderful it is over there. I've heard lately that we are going to be having a T-Mobile cell tower in our neighborhood. That makes no sense to me. For one, it just takes away from the beautiful community that we live in. Why are they putting cell towers in residential neighborhoods? I don't understand that at all. I would really like you to really look at this matter and help us avoid it. And I know other cities are doing it, like Burbank. So if you, they're having the same issues too, and they're somehow avoiding it. If you could look into that and just, I know you've already talked about how you are looking forward to the meetings and stuff, and sorry, I've been here all night long. I think I need like a Red Bull or something. I've been sitting there too long. I don't even know where I'm at. I think I'm at the City Council. But anyways, just look into it. It just doesn't belong in my neighborhood or your neighborhood or anyone's residential neighborhood, a cellular tower.
Okay, thank you. If you find a Red Bull out there, send one up here too, okay?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think that was a good idea. From now on at 9 o'clock, we should take a break for 5 minutes and have a bunch of Red Bulls and then come back.
Yeah. No, actually, Mr. Yusefian, you don't get a Red Bull. We're cutting you off.
It's a warm glass of
Marguerite Nick Lincoln, followed by Deborah Larry? Perhaps?
Good evening, Mayor Draymond and members of the City Council and staff. My name is Marguerite Lincoln, and I have been a resident of Glendale for 27 years. 2 weeks ago, I was here along with several neighbors expressing our concern and anger over the planned installation of a T-Mobile telephone vault and cellular antenna, and our appeal to move the cellular antenna to a location outside of our residential neighborhood. First, I wish to applaud and thank you for your prompt response to our request by putting a hold on the project until a future meeting with T-Mobile, the City Council, and neighbors takes place. With your support, we are hopeful that the outcome of that meeting will be satisfactory to the residents of Northwest Glendale. Second, at the City Council meeting 2 weeks ago, Mr. Howard informed us that the city has no power to do anything with regards to the placement of the cell towers, and that we should contact our federal representatives. I beg to differ in that the city may not be able to stop T-Mobile, AT&T, and other cell companies from the installation of these antennas, but certainly the city has some jurisdiction in the placement of them. Our predicament may be new to Glendale, but countless cities throughout the U.S. have been faced with these problems for many years. I do not know when this meeting with T-Mobile is to take place, but I believe it is imperative that the city take a more proactive approach now to dealing with telecommunications issues relating to cellular antennas, as our problem on Cumberland Road is only the first of several to come. You indicated 2 weeks ago that a process should be put in place for the notification of all residents when a cellular antenna or tower is to be installed. I am here tonight to urge the Glendale City Council to not only immediately come up with a notification process, which, by the way, should happen before the permit is issued and not after, but also to consider putting together a committee or commission to study how other cities are dealing with this matter. In the limited research I've done these past 2 weeks, I've learned that there is much the city can do, but it requires research and the passage of ordinances, codes, and procedures that telecommunications companies must adhere to if they want to install these antennas. In addition to contacting other cities, we should also consider contacting consulting companies such as the Center of Municipal Solutions Consultants, as they are great resources for our city to use. You indicated that you, the City Council, cannot be checking the thousands of permits that come through the city, and I agree. But you do have the power to establish a telecommunications board similar to the DRB, and that this panel can oversee the application process so that the residential neighborhoods are protected. The City of Glendale may not be able to stop these companies from putting in these antennas, but the city certainly has the power to decide how it should be done. I sincerely hope that you will strongly consider my request, as I am sure that I speak for many residents of Glendale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah Larry, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm sure you'll tell me. Followed by Paul, and let me pronounce this even less correctly, Paul Latifogen, maybe?
Hi, my name is Deborah Larry, or Lear. You pronounce it the right way. I live in Glendale on North Pacific Avenue, north of Kenneth and south of Cumberland. I'm here to talk about the cellular towers, but I'm also here as a member of the Hoover, alumni member of the Hoover PTSA, and I wanted to make sure that I let everybody know about the 51st tour of homes that's coming up on December the 13th from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And many of you have probably poured tea over the years or have been to the Hoover Tour of Homes, but it's one of the longest running holiday traditions in our city. And the funds, the proceeds from this event go to help Hoover High School students with their scholarships, as well as extra items that the school needs for the teachers, sports, whatever. This year we're very lucky to have 4 incredible historic homes on the tour. And what's exciting about this and what's different than the historical tour is that these homes are all decorated by different florists in the community, so it involves different florists. It also includes homeowners who generously open their homes to the community, and at each home there's a theme featuring the holiday complimentary tea that's poured usually by dignitaries, school board members. The Hoover Jazz Ensemble will be playing at another home. There'll be a country kitchen, and there's also the new Hoover Choral Group that'll be singing the home. So I'd like to urge everybody to come out to this event, and I have a little flyer about it, which is the perfect segue because these great 4 beautiful homes are in the northwest Glendale area and the Rossmorne area, where potentially we've heard not only is there one proposed cellular tower that's supposed to go on Cumberland Pacific. That is one of the most historic districts in this city. I can't believe that T-Mobile or whomever would even consider putting something in a place like that. I think that that's definitely going to reduce the property values, which this city needs, our property taxes, to help pay for your swimming pool, for example. So I have lived there since 1990. My home is 1921. I raised 3 sons in that area. They've all gone to public school. Keppel, Toll, Hoover. I love that community. We need to keep the community as beautiful and as wonderful as it is to keep people coming in and buying these homes. If you allow one cellular tower, another one's going to come in, and then another one. So every 2 blocks, there's a potential there's going to be hundreds of cellular towers in the city of Glendale. I don't understand why the cellular tower people can't be put either in some vacant lands up on the hillsides, or maybe like Burbank does, they have an ordinance where they're all on tops of commercial buildings. So it's not in the areas where people sleep and where people walk their dogs and play with their kids and go to school. Because I think what's going to happen is that if you allow T-Mobile in, then AT&T is going to want their tower, and Verizon's going to want their tower. And I heard that there's another one proposed for Glenwood and Pacific, if I'm not sure if that's correct or not. So I just think that Glendale has these great pockets that are historically beautiful, that are historically relevant, that create an atmosphere where people come here and are willing to spend good money for these homes. And when you start putting in things like cellular towers, already we have a lot of these little telephone boxes that are propping up on every corner of our neighborhood. I don't know what they're about. Put on these concrete slabs with the no bushes around them, and now the one on my street has graffiti on it already. So we I know we all need our modern conveniences, we need our cell phones, we need our telephones, but somehow there needs to be a plan to integrate it so that it works with our communities and the aestheticness of the communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul Ladfoken? Will you help me with that?
Hi, my name is Paul Ladfoken. I live up on Valley View Avenue. Mr. Mayor and council members and staff. Apparently there's an ordinance on the books in Glendale prohibiting RVs for parking on the streets, recreational vehicles. We have a small motorhome which we sometimes bring in and park to load our stuff in. An hour before we were leaving a couple of weeks ago, there was a parking ticket on it. If there indeed is an ordinance like that, I would urge City Council to expel it or annul it, whatever. Imagine we have friends coming in here that's going to Disneyland, for instance. They say, we come and spend a couple of nights with you. So we can't have you. You can't park on the streets here. I think it's very unfair. We see commercial vehicles larger than our little motorhome parked on the streets everywhere, especially moving vans up in our neighborhood. I will urge that ordinance be expelled. Thank you.
Okay. With the idea in mind that this is related to perhaps some staff, direction to staff, can somebody please contact Mr. Ladfoken and explain to him the detail of the ordinance and as it relates to moving vans and so on, and see if there are any other questions he has, and then perhaps get back to us as to possible options.
I'm not familiar with what our regulations are.
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Is his telephone number on this card?
Oh, no, let's see.
If not, can you leave us your telephone number, sir?
No, just the address.
Or your cell phone number, whichever you prefer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zern, for doing that. All right. Eleftheria Polychronis, followed by Mike Mohill.
Good evening. I'm Eleftheria Polychronis, and I live on 1611 North Pacific Avenue in Glendale. I'm here tonight not to complain, but just to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the City Council for the leadership position that you took in stopping the installation of the T-Mobile antenna in the middle of a residential area and our homes, which is, on Cumberland and Pacific. We, the residents of the Northwest Glendale, want to work with all of you as a team and relocate the installation of the antenna and equipment to a location away from our homes where it will have no negative impact, such as environment, property values, and nuisance. Concluded, I would like to ask you, please, to keep us informed about the progress in this matter, and not just to wait, 6 months from now to see surprises as we did a couple of months ago. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you very much, Ms. Polychronis. Mike Mohill, followed by Barry Allen.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilman, being politically correct. I often attend City Council meetings, and I guess I must have missed last Tuesday night's meeting regarding the fireworks at the Americana. I did see our Fire Chief, Harold Sagan, sitting in front of me the other night, but paid no attention as I entered the council chambers late. The week before, I attended the Glendale Redevelopment Agency meeting, where all the members were pleased with the report showing the success of the Americana at Brand. Although the financial report was only for a few months, the meeting that afternoon was all positive from council members and staff. I spoke before the agency stating that I too was very pleased with the success of the Americana at Brand. No, not everything about the Americana was perfect in the report, but all was positive. Here we are going into a recession, and sales at the Americana and surrounding businesses are doing well, even better than our neighboring cities. I did tell council that I had read a few letters in the Glendale News Press critical of the Americana, but be it traffic or having to pay for parking. Some critics talked about how expensive it would be to live at the Americana, but so is living in Glendale compared to Compton, but less expensive than Beverly Hills. I asked the City Council, and specifically the Mayor, to write a letter to the GNP, letting the public know about the success and some shortcomings of the Americana. The Americana opened in May and is about 6 months old, and a report from the Council would be appreciated. Mayor Draymond told me after the meeting that he would write something to the GNP. I told him that writing something from the Mayor would be great, as he represents the whole city. This morning, to my chagrin, there had not been a letter from the Mayor, nor has there been one since, but a front-page article critical of the Americana and the fireworks this past Saturday night. Council called the move to have the fireworks dumb-headed and ill-advised. Wow. I guess the usual critics of the Americana must have been having a great chuckle, hoping to put eggs on the face of the Americana and council members. They succeeded. Our mayor and councilmen played right into their hands. Mayor Draymond said having fireworks was dumb-headed. Councilman Yusefian said the fireworks sent a negative message. I happen to live in one of the brush areas of Glendale and went to the Americana Saturday night, and I was part of the 30,000 people who enjoyed themselves that evening. Sure, I knew parts of L.A. County were on fire. So what? Was I supposed to stop my life and stay home looking at the boob tube and watch the fires on TV? No. I took myself and my wife to the Americana and went on with my life and enjoyed all the festivities. I only wish I had stayed longer to enjoy the fireworks, as I was unable to find seating. The fire chief insisted that the fireworks did not pose a danger to the surrounding area, and that the event did not receive any special treatment beyond what any major gathering would receive in the city. He acknowledged that the decision to approve the special permit was a bad decision, given the subsequent political fallout. I am told that our mayor at one time in the 1990s was an actor, and I guess he never heard the old saying, the show must go on. Why should Caruso affiliates reschedule or cancel the fireworks that evening that he had been planning weeks in advance? There was no immediate danger to the town center, according to the city chief. Those citizens who chose to be at the Americana were not complaining, and the fireworks must have been great theatrics. I only wish I had stayed long enough to enjoy the program. Great show, Mr. Caruso. Thanks for putting Glendale on the map and hopefully making our town center a destination place in the Southland. Even George Washington had his critics before his fireworks began in 1776. Also, we had free publicity this week. Daily News has a beautiful article about the Americana. Isn't that nice to know, Mr. Mayor? I also read in today's paper that we have two developments going on right now that have been approved for development, and that's probably because of the influence of the Americana. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Yes, Mr. Yusefian. Oh, absolutely.
Sure, Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mohill,
Yes, sir.
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
What does Red Flag Day mean to you?
With this fire.
Isn't it a communist holiday?
Only on May 1st.
Yes, there's fire danger. Yes. But
Okay,
the fire chief did not.
I just asked the question, and
Okay.
you answered it.
Yes, I
Thank you
did.
very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's what I wanted to know.
No problem.
Okay,
you know?
Mr. Allen, Barry Allen, followed by Evelyn Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. I'm Barry Allen with Van Guardians. And by the way, I just wanted to let everybody know that the Vanguard will be coming out again this week, and look for some very, very interesting articles in it by a number of people. And a couple of issues. One, of course, is we have yet to hear from the fire chief about the fatality on Lorraine and why the run took 7 minutes to go less than a half mile. But you're wondering what this is, and certainly you're well to do so. This is it's to demonstrate that the founding fathers of Glendale, when they started the Glendale Water and Power, they did it so it would be a cash cow and be able to give you all sorts of money. And that money comes to the city council. And the city council takes that money, and we never see it again. It's gone. And then we have property taxes, and we have sales taxes. In fact, the Americana provided, $150,000 in tax revenue that would pay for one fireman, and we got that money again. Look at that, we got the money again. And the city council said, wow, that's great. Give it to us. And we did. And it's gone. Unfortunately, folks, it won't come back. It's spent. And we're spending it faster than it comes in. The expenditures exceed the revenues each year.
fact, the last 8 years, I think it was basically without transfers in and out, about $111 million we spent more than the revenues paid us back. What are we going to do to change that? This council is responsible for spending more than we have. I've been walking the streets and I've been talking to a lot of the young people, and I've asked them if they have any idea how much debt the city is in, what the principal and interest of bonds are. And I said, I'm not going to pay it because I'm going to be dead and gone. But you 20-year-olds and 25-year-olds, you're going to have to pay back $1.2 billion principal and interest in those bonds. And you know what these kids are saying? They're saying, wow, where do I register to vote? How do I vote this council out? How do I make those choices to people who have been spending our money and have disenfranchised me? Nobody has been telling me. I'm just a young kid. I'm 18 years old, but I can vote now, and I need to find out where this money's going, how it's being spent. I drive to Burbank, and I go to the restaurants, and I go to their things, and I don't have to pay to park. In Glendale, not only do I have to pay to park, it used to be that I could park until 6 o'clock, and then after 6 o'clock, it wouldn't cost me anything. Today, it costs me till 10 o'clock at night. We've already heard someone speak to that issue. So, what can I do to change it? And as I tell these folks who stop me and they said, "You're Barry Allen, I see you on TV," and I ask them, I said, "Get a life. There's something else besides Glendale television on Tuesday night." But they're asking me who to vote for. And I said, well, I haven't seen any real names pop up that I would vote for, save one. But I said, I really can't tell you about it unless you ask me personally and I whisper in your ear, because I run a nonprofit. Nonprofits cannot endorse candidates, nor can we oppose them. But we can rate them, and you can look at our ratings. And that's what we're going to be doing for this next election. Thank you. I'm Barry Allen. And remember, it's empty, guys. There's nothing left. You've spent it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I understand they're looking for entertainers, by the way, at Americana. And that's quite a magic show, so maybe leave your resume at the door. Okay, Evelyn Hansen, followed by John McMahon.
Oh, man, I'm supposed to follow that. Barry's not usually hard to follow, and...
Levitation. Try levitation.
Hey, 10,000 magicians out of work, and he's trying to join the union. Evelyn Hansen, longtime resident of Glendale. My mother was born in Glendale, as I've mentioned before. I think Mayor Draymond's idea of the historical documents and all of that coming in to be documented and coalesced and organized was a great idea. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, I tried to get something going with the Glendale Historical Society that I called the Doctor House Brain Dump. There are a lot of people in Glendale who are either dying off or leaving who know so much about Glendale. I feel really badly. I started the project because I'm going to be leaving Glendale. I know probably, does anyone up there know how it is the Doctor's House came to be saved? Does anybody know what happened during the saving, how they did it? I do. I was there. I remember Ginger Bremberg telling my mother what happened behind closed doors with the city council as to why it was saved. Nobody else does. I've told a few docents up at the Doctor's House, oh, it's a really interesting story, Mr. Najarian.
Is that a violation?
No, it actually just shows how powerful your wives are.
I only have one.
Wives collectively.
Ooh, the secret is out now.
Did you know there used to be, up where that sports complex is by the 2 freeway, did you know that there was a really beautiful little spring-fed lake up there? It was a stop-off point for migrating waterfowl. It's called Fern Lake. Caltrans didn't want to build a bridge to it or build a bridge over it, so they filled it in instead. They routed the water from the spring into the sewer system, or into the drain pipes, the water runoff for the rain.
Storm drains.
Storm drains, that's what I'm looking for, thank you. Do you know that Hoover High School has, or at least did have when it was put in, a design flaw that had I had a little bit more time, and if Mr. Murphy, the then principal of Hoover High School, I might have been able to get us a couple days off by blowing the sewer main coming out of Hoover High School. I used to, going home from Toll Junior High School, I used to take a shortcut through Hoover on my way home, and when they put up the construction barriers, I didn't see any point that should impede my shortcut. They told me I had to get a hard hat, or they told me I couldn't go through. I made them tell me why, so they said, well, it's a hard hat area. So I came back the next day with my hard hat. My father was a construction supervisor with Caltrans. I had one. After that, they just gave up. I had my run of the place, and I was looking at the blueprints and asked the plumbing contractor about this, and he agreed it was a design flaw in the plumbing. There's so many things about Glendale that y'all don't know, and we're either dying off or leaving. And unless something is done like this or a brain dump before we leave, nobody's going to know. So, excellent idea, Mayor Draymond. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. John McMahon, followed by Bruce Philpott.
Everyone can yawn before I start so we can get that over with, because it feels like it's about midnight. My name is John McMahon. My wife Maggie and I live at 509 Cumberland. Last week I brought some boards of the picture of the front of my house. I am the person who T-Mobile is planning to put a cell site 5 feet in front of where my kids play on my front lawn. So while I talk, if you have kids or grandkids, if you can picture that sort of obstruction 5 feet in front of your house causing lymphoma for your children, that would be awesome. The first thing I'd like to do is thank the city, the mayor, the city attorney, the city manager, all the council for helping to halt this last week, and Public Works. Everyone was here and heard a lot of this last week. I know Councilman Youssef and you were not here during that, but with your passion for lot division, I am sure you will be an advocate for this. I also wanted to state before I get into some of the serious things that I run a design firm, and if there were 5 designers on City Council, no decision would ever get made. I know there was a comment earlier. In terms of an update on what's going on with this, Ed Dazzo, who is the head of the West Tower, is the subcontractor on the project, has informed me that the project has gone on for 2 years. That's also the length of time John Pack of T-Mobile, who's in charge of the project, dates back to January 2007. I bought my home, like I said before, from the senior assistant city attorney and senior litigator for the city. 9-10 months after that, it was never informed to me, even though it went through both those gentlemen. Actually, not both those gentlemen, but John Pack said it went through the city attorney's office, so nothing was ever disclosed to me about this process. Also, I'd like to state that I've already been contacted by the person from T-Mobile who's supposed to come down and make us all feel safe about this. I don't know how they got my cell phone number. I thought it was curious. I don't actually have T-Mobile. I assume someone from the city gave this person. Maybe one of the subcontractors gave them my number. We have a neighborhood coalition that's forming. It probably doesn't surprise anyone. It's a nice neighborhood. There's a lot of business owners there. We've got a still screener. We've got documentary filmmakers. We've got 3 heads of ad firms. So we're putting together, we have Marguerite doing a ton of research, and I think when the time is right, we're going to present that, obviously, but the city has to sort of get to this point where they make a decision about who they're going to represent here. There's obviously the corporations, and they have their control, and they have their abilities under the Federal Telecommunications Act, what they can do, but there's also the city and what the city has control over. And the last time we sat here, the feeling was, let's throw up our hands, we're powerless. Marguerite's done a ton of research that, again, we'll present about cities like San Diego that have fought this, have won, have been appealed and lost, had it overturned by the Non-Circuit Court of Appeals and won again, and not taken to the Supreme Court, and they have permanently won on this issue. So we have to get to this point where, we have to figure out how we can all work together for advocacy. on this issue. We as residents want to know, who's our strategist on the city council to work with us? Who's our advocate on this issue? Who's going to help this, go down and help this go down in a better way for us? I have my real estate, one of the brokers in the area who helped me, who participated in part of the transactions for me, Jerry Arman, who I believe is the largest volume real estate salesperson in Glendale, putting in writing to me how this is affecting the property values and the house which in turn will affect the property tax. So we have to decide, soon what we're getting in this income stream, and how this is going to measure against the drop in income stream. I've contacted the county assessor about the process to actually appeal the property tax on my house. It's actually not that difficult. So what's going to happen when angry residents all do this and all the property tax revenue is going to decrease in this neighborhood? Like someone else mentioned, there's another cell tower planned a half a mile away in the same neighborhood. T-Mobile just happened to mention this early on in the process, the first day when I was contacting Mayor Draymond. After that, they don't mention anything after that. We also have a neighborhood resident. He lives in Virginia, which if you know where Cumberland and Pacific is, that's about 3 blocks away. He's actually the equivalent, I believe, of Gary Edsel, our public works person, except he has a completely different agenda. So he was able to share with us how Burbank is dealing with this, how they've been keeping it out of residential areas because they have a completely different, they've sort of hit this area, they tried to go into their residences before they tried to go into ours. So there's a point where we can learn from what's going on in Burbank and take advantage of it. So just want to mention a couple quick things before I run out of time. We've been doing a logo exploration. You'll see a lot of these logos on some neighborhood signs. We'll print about 200 of them. The next city council member meeting, I will be bringing them. Hopefully you guys will put them on your lawns, supporting us on this. And if I can just present one more thing. This is a banner that's going to appear. In full size, it's 15 feet wide. It's going to appear strapped to the front of my house. This shows some of the basic issues. It also has all the local and national media affiliates. As I said before, I run an ad firm. We also have a PR firm that's related to us. We will be trying to contact all these people. The goal is, if we can't stop this, the end game is, let's put them on 60 Minutes. Let's figure out how the national media outlets are going to respond to this. Okay. So thank you very much. I need your help. I really need your help. As a human to a human, I am begging for your help for my kids. I appreciate it.
Mr. McMahon, thank you. Bruce Philpott, followed by Rita.
Mayor?
I don't want to get into it now, unless it's just a real quick.
No, I think before Mr. McMahon gets a visit from Neighborhood Services on the sign, the city attorney may want to talk to him to let him know that that banner is probably going to be illegal.
All right. Whoa.
You may want to talk to him after.
Let's hang on a minute. At the end, we're just a few speakers from the end of oral communications, and we'll be able to address some of this then. Let's not do back and forth just now. Okay, Mr. Philpott, I'm sorry, followed by Rita Unikian.
Good evening, Mayor Draymond and members of the City Council and staff, members of the public. My name is Bruce Philpott. Glendale, over the years, has had a historic reputation of being a fiscally conservative city. It's the reason why I moved here, or one of the reasons why I moved here 40 years ago, and it's one of the reasons why many current residents of Glendale moved here. They brought their families. Their kids attended public schools as my kids had. However, there has been a break in this tradition, and it started about 6 or 7 years ago with deficit spending. One of the members of your own audit committee wrote a letter or community commentary in the Glendale News Press on the 3rd of this month, and in that article, he encouraged the public to become more involved in the finances of this city. He identified 3 main problems. One is a massive increase in payroll. The second is a massive increase in staff. And the third is just a massive overall cost of government. In that same time period, according to your records, I've discerned that the city employees have grown from 1,640 to about 2,500. The number I came up with is that you've added 880 or 53%. It's your own documents. I'll be happy to share them with you. Mr. Falwell, I would be happy to share those documents with you. That has resulted in nearly $200 million in deficit spending over that same period of time. The answer so far by the City Council has been, let's ratchet up revenue so that we can bring it up to that huge expenditures that are occurring annually in the city's budget. You have been successful in doing that, and you've increased, for example, electrical rates are the highest of any survey that I've seen. I saw a survey of 34 utilities, and Glendale was number one in cost per kilowatt hour to the ratepayers. We also have a lot of retired people in the city, people living on fixed incomes. Those kind of fees and rates are creating great hardship on them, and because of our overall economy, it really is only going to get worse. The real solution is you have to cut payroll. There is absolutely no other way, and it is the only way that you're going to restore a sense of fiscal conservative policies that have been the tradition of this city, but have been lost over the last 6 or 7 years. I saw here where you had a need to find several $100,000 to support M&O's maintenance and operations of a swimming pool at Pacific Park. This document, which is, as you probably know, is published 4 times a year. My understanding, it's 30,000 a publication. That's 120,000. But when you look at the list of city employees that are involved, I counted 42 participate in each and every one of these publications. So the real cost of this document isn't 120,000. It is the cost of fairly expensive city employees providing many, many hours quarterly to produce this, and at what result? There's other ways to communicate with the public, and frankly, most people just view this as a public relation tool. The real solid, hard information could go into the utility billing and reach the public in other ways. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Philpott. Rita Unikian, followed by Herbert Milano.
Hi, my name is Rita Unikian. The economy is very bad. The rents are more every day. No one is thinking about us. Why should people who work to help America not have any help from the government during this time when the economy is so bad? Every day the government helps banks and people who have money, but people who work hard and pay rent have no help. How many times do I have to say that the economy is bad? Rents are too high. America needs to help the people. I ask you to please help me to pass rent control in Glendale so that for all low-income residents and senior citizens in Glendale who are struggling to make a living can enjoy this city. I have petitioned with thousands of signatures for rent control. We want you to listen to us. I ask the council to put rent control on the ballot. Put it on the agenda, then discuss. I care a lot about rent control. I hope that I can reach 13,000 signatures before April so that the council can put the rent control on the ballot. I am sure this will happen. I am sure this will happen because God is with me to help the people who are desperate for rent control. Thank you for your consideration. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless you. God bless America.
Thank you, Ms. Unikia. Okay, Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Milano. Well, as usual, I have some concerns with regard to the way the city follows some of its original plans. And I was looking not too long ago at the land use element of 1972 and looked at the projections for population back with those documents. And I then tried to take a look at some of the other elements that the city has, the open space element, the park use element. And I think it would be quite refreshing to go back to those documents and look at what the population was throughout Glendale, including southern Glendale, and how the objectives of the land use element is stated. What were the original objectives that the city council and management had at the time? Because the issues that we face today and the hardships that we face today with regard to traffic and congestion and lack of parkland has to do with our inability to follow continually on a regular basis to see what was the plan and how are we adapting to it. I've read a few books on urban planning. I think it's a fantastic read. Maybe I should have gone into that because it's a fantastic career. Because it's a way to really enhance the quality of life of a community. But we have standards. We have standard national with regard to population relative to parkland. And the national standard is 6 to 10 acres per thousand. So when I look at an area such as this area of Glendale, bounded by Brand Boulevard, Glendale Avenue, Broadway, and the 134 freeway, it's an area that is constrained. It's an area that has no additional parkland. Yet, we find more and more multifamily housing being built in that area. So at some point in time, someone has to say, wait a second, we increased the population by 500, or we increased it by 1,000. Where is our rule that says that if you have 1,000 more people, you provide a park? You see, but we don't want to face that, and neither did many councils before you. And so long as we continue to ignore basic urban planning concepts, basic national standards, we are going to find ourselves with this type of problem, where we come back and say, well, we used up all the land, sorry, it's now too expensive to provide the open spaces, or provide the parkland, or provide the facilities for youth. And the area, obviously, that has no representation, southern Glendale, gets the short end of the stick, significantly, and the data shows that it's not just an opinion, it's there. And so how do we get the proper type of representation that says we will take a look at our urban plans the way they were stated back in 72, back in the 1980s when it was updated, back in the 1990s when it was updated. When we want to come back and take a look at the environmental impact reports and says, this is the way we will mitigate this problem. But nobody comes back to pay attention to that. The document is created, tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 is paid for the document, is filed away, and those mitigations are not put into effect. It is a matter of looking at the objectives that you had, or your prior council had, and others before you, and say, we will align the future growth of the city according to those. It's not a contentious issue. It's a matter of simply saying, we will follow a plan. And these are the standards by which we will follow a plan. Because after a while, 10 years later, 20 years later, we find ourselves with a significant disparity, an unfairness that is palpable, and that you see areas of Glendale in dire need of those services, the green spaces, the facilities for youth, and other areas of Glendale where there is no problem, where you get up in the morning, you drive your car, and you have the green space, and you have the clean streets, and you have all the greenery around you, so it doesn't necessarily touch you. But this problem that I bring to you, it's not uncommon to cities. You see it everywhere. Whether it's in Brazil or whether it's in Africa, it's basically a matter of having sufficient clout or sufficient amount of empathy from individuals who are elected. But somehow, people forget. It gets lost in the shuffle. We don't seem to be connecting anymore to individuals who basically don't have the citizenship to vote, or who perhaps are youth and they are not old enough to vote. So they don't necessarily matter. So who has the empathy to be able to say, here are needed areas in Glendale where there is no representation, but we will attend to them anyway in the same way they attend to the other areas of Glendale that are already, that already are the haves of the city. And that's what I'm here to tell you, that it was in your plans. It was in the plans of council before you, and I think that will be a really fantastic read. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Milano. All right, before we get into our council comments here, and let me just go back to, if I could ask, a lot of the comments have been about the cellular antenna, not a cell tower, by the way. But, Mr. Starbird, could you repeat the information about the meeting and what we're hoping to do here, and what the status of this particular installation is, just because many of these people were not here when you did it before?
Well, once again, at least T-Mobile's efforts relative to installation of this tower and the others they had planned is on hold pending I'll call it neighborhood community meeting with T-Mobile regarding their proposal. A date as yet hasn't been set. As I understand, Mr. Zern, we're waiting to hear back from their people as to their availability for a meeting.
Okay. And there have been a number of questions as to our jurisdiction and our authority, and I've also asked that we look at that with regard to Burbank and so on, and bring that information back. We had already asked by consensus that we have we look at some sort of policy going forward, because, as you pointed out, whenever the last time we spoke about this was, that there were at least 5, we thought approximately 5 more that in just that area. This is, someone said this is the first area, it won't be the last. It's not the first area, but I'm sure it won't be the last, so we do need to do that. And then, Mr. Zern, who issues these permits? Many of the speakers keep speaking as though Glendale is issuing the permits to install these installations.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it requires an encroachment permit as part of the process. That encroachment permit comes from Public Works.
Right.
So that's the ability to simply put equipment, non-city equipment, in the public right-of-way. So that's the process based on our discussions with the attorney's office that we follow in dealing with these folks. It doesn't mean that there can't be other guidelines, policies, procedures, and processes attached to that as well.
Okay. All right. That's just the general information I wanted to touch before we go to the council input. Mr. Quintero.
Well, I agree with the speakers on this issue, and it's evident from some of the research they've done that other cities are being much more restrictive and seem to have policies in place. One of them mentioned San Diego, and now we're talking about Burbank. So I think both the city attorney's office and Public Works, from my perspective, needs to see just how restrictive we can be and to push that envelope, because otherwise we're going to be, all these neighborhoods are going to be inundated with these cell facilities. I mean, when you think of Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile and on and on and on. So, I mean, we have to get this huge elephant under control once and for all. And it seems like we won't be leading the charge. It's being done across the state. So let's get that. And it seems like in just a short time they've come up with cities and organizations that are very active in this area. So let's get rolling so we can put a halt to it in whatever way we can. Put a halt and make it something that becomes difficult for these companies. They can't just willy-nilly be running around the city doing what they want. That just doesn't work, whether it's in single-family neighborhoods or multifamily neighborhoods. Maybe there's some way to keep it more in a commercial area. We've got mountains, as a matter of fact, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, just north of this particular intersection. I take it up to my house on a regular basis. We've got empty land up there. There are mountainous areas that I have a feeling the city of Glendale owns that property, that perhaps that would be the place to put a group of cell facilities together. I don't know, but at any rate, we have to work on this because it's certainly on us, not just for this neighborhood, but other neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quintero. Mr. Najarian.
Yeah, to just carry on with that, clearly the neighbors and the residents are concerned about this, and I see two issues at play. Number one is a legal issue about the rights of a cellular provider to place its antennas or towers. Second issue is the technical issue. Are there other alternatives? Does a cell tower or antenna in the mountains provide their needs for service in the residential areas? We need to know the legal issues before we sit down and talk with them, because I think that's basic. If we can lay down the law and say, look, sorry, if there's actually is a Ninth Circuit case, which I think the speaker referenced, we need to know. I'm not saying there is, but I haven't done my own research, but we need to know that and know exactly where we stand and let council know as soon as possible where we stand. So if there's a policy issue or at least a position that council needs to take on this, we've got at least the legal background before we go into the meeting, presumably to negotiate or to urge or cajole or to resolve this issue. So I know Scott said legal's working on it, but sooner the better, so we know where we all stand.
Mr. Usapian.
I think Michael wants to say something.
Michael, do you want to say something? Mr. Garcia.
No, I just has been said already, we are looking at the issue. The attorney in our office who handles this issues on an almost daily basis is up to speed on, is working on that for you. I will tell you, we are familiar with the Ninth Circuit.
It's not Ed Mauer, is it?
No. We are familiar with the Ninth Circuit case. And I will tell you, just as a general principle, the federal law distinguishes between the ability of cities to regulate on private property versus public property, and that's where we're going to see the distinction. But I don't want to speak out of turn before we've gotten all that research together and provided that information for you.
Okay, Mr. Garcia, thank you. Mr. Usapian. Pointing your thumb at the city manager. Mr. City Manager.
Well, just to add to Mr. Garcia's comments, we don't have a desire to reinvent the wheel here. If Burbank or San Diego or some other community has wrestled with this and figured out a way to effectively regulate it, then we'd like to find those and we'll follow suit. We don't have a desire to reinvent the wheel. If somebody else has done the research, legal and technical, and figured out a solution, then we're more than happy to borrow that, and we'll look at that as well.
All right, so if it's not the wheel that we desire to reinvent, what are we desirous of reinventing, sir?
Now you put me on the spot.
We just take somebody else's podcast.
All right.
It's late, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Usapian.
Mr. Mayor, I think one thing that I would ask the city attorney to talk to the individual is on the issue of his sign. I hope he didn't take it the wrong way, but I didn't want him to get a citation from our neighborhood services. There are certain rules and regulations as far as the size of the sign that you're allowed to put on your front lawn and so on and so forth. So I wanted you to make sure that the banner or whatever you're going to put out there, it is within regulation. Because then when you get cited, then you're going to be back in here saying, gee, I got cited. That's number one. Number two, for some of you, this may be a new event. I was introduced to all of this in 1996. 1996, Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunication Act, and I was a new commissioner on BZA. My first meeting, I was in the room. They wanted to put some cell towers in the Verdugo Woodlands on a water tower. I know some of you remember that. Okay? And that was a big problem. We had more attorneys in that room than there were staff or commissioners from both sides. End of the day, this item was taken to the coordinating council. The coordinating council, in conjunction with the planning director, worked on a new ordinance that dealt with some of the very things that you talk about. Because the person who owned the property, had the water tower, was putting the cell site there, and they were getting, I think at the time was $1,700 a month. And so we forbid that. And we said that you have to find, under the Telecommunication Act, it says that you have to find other venues that you can put the cell towers. In the process, I also learned, when you use a cell tower, it's not like a radio frequency. It doesn't work the way radio antennas work. It is a unique device. It has to be unobstructed. So in the beginning, when the cell towers were put in, they were mostly put in areas that covered the general area, and a lot of the neighborhoods, especially in the hillsides, in Glendale or canyons, like where I live, even though we have cell towers on top of the mountains, we do not get cell service because there's not a direct path. If you are on a curve, the signal doesn't turn. The signal is just a straight shot. It's not a round signal. It's a weird-looking thing I had never seen before. That's why they put these cell sites in different locations to get power to all the residents, so there's no blind spots. They also have certain requirements by the feds. In order for them to provide the service, they have to get coverage. And so that's why they're starting to move into these dead zones, so-called, and eliminate some of those dead zones. So it's not as simple as we think we could do whatever we want to do. We have to deal with the federal government. And that's where what I'm mostly interested in is going to be what other cities or other states, because it's not just a state of California issue, this is all over the United States, what other regulations other states were able to pass or get through that passed the mustard and was able to control this. And that's the only way you're going to get through, because at one point they will just come in, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they'll be here, they'll put their cell site, and there's nothing we could do about it unless he figures out a legal way of doing it.
Okay. Let
That's
me,
my 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Mr. Yusefian. Let me add a couple of things, Mr. McMahon, and to share with some of your neighbors. I know it may seem to you like nothing is going on with this topic up here. I assure you that isn't the case. Okay? This is something we are pursuing. Again, as you've heard several people say, this is not new. This is not a new topic. I'll tell you what kind of bothers me when I hear from, and I'm not speaking of you or your neighbors, I'm talking about people on this side of the dais sometimes that say, well, you know, it's just out of our jurisdiction, that's it, we can't do anything about it. That is what happens when we move from being advocates to bystanders as public officials. So we don't have the answers for you yet. We will get them, and we'll find out. And the answer to your question about where's your advocate, you have advocates up here. I'm not the only one, but I'm one of them. And I hope to get you an answer, not just for you in your neighborhood, but for neighborhoods in this city. We'll see what happens, and to the extent you can share whatever research that you have been able to cull, that would be helpful too. So the other thing is, don't go away. Keep your voices active. We want to deal with this issue, and you're going to get your advocacy. I don't know how it's going to come out yet, but you're going to get some advocacy. So, or you are getting some advocacy. Is there any other comments? Okay. Oh, I thought you were launching forward.
No, I'm launching right out.
I want to. You're launching out of here. Okay. I do want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for participating in your local government's activity. You were all greatly appreciated. I thank you. Can we entertain a motion to adjourn in memory of Reg Gorgia?
Second, and happy Thanksgiving to my colleagues and everyone in City of Glendale also.
Thank you. Okay. We're adjourned.